Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Movie Discussion Pocket Dimension, where time does not exist and the only thing that matters is film. I'm Jay, and as always, I'm here with Cole.
Yep.
And today we're going to be discussing a film called Primer from 2004. And apparently, I have the uncanny ability to pick films that Cole hates. So this should be an interesting discussion here tonight, guys. But what's interesting about this film is it was made on a budget of $7,000.
Yeah.
So that's like a crazy number, for independent film. Usually independent film means like $20 million these days. So,
yeah. I didn't know it was that low. I knew it was pretty low, but that's pretty impressive.
And Shane Carruth, writer, director, actor, he basically did everything himself and first-time filmmaker and basically was learning the entire time he was making this film. So.
It's funny, we just, talked about Orson Welles and what he did for through his career, and of course starting with Citizen Kane and how he took on all these jobs. So it's kind of the same thing here. I mean, he does pretty much everything in his movies.
Yeah.
He wrote the script, he's the director, he's one of the two main characters.
Well, he actually didn't.
He did the editing.
He did the editing as well, and the music. And the scoring. He wasn't intending on starring in the film, but he just couldn't find anybody that was going to work out to play the role the way he wanted. So he just kind of jumped in there. But, obviously it's not the best made film, but when you consider that it's the guy's first time doing it, there's some choppy editing, there's some bad camera work, which, he admits to all of that stuff, but, it's, it's got to go to film school.
I thought was like deliberate. Like there's at least 2 or 3 times where the characters would be talking about something, and then one of them or both of them would see something, and that would drive the action, and we wouldn't see it.
Yeah,
they'd talk for a while about what was going on before we saw anything, and like they did that about 2 or 3 times. That irked me. But I mean, to clarify a bit, no, I didn't hate this movie. Although there's probably a few moments where I kind of found myself hating it. Well, the problem was, I don't know. I think of myself as pretty savvy, and I've seen so many movies, and I think of myself as pretty smart, and I'm pretty good at, extrapolating plots and things even when they're difficult, when you're doing like multi-layered movies with, I don't know, with a lot of characters or points of view, or maybe movies that have like non-linear plots and stuff like that. I'm usually pretty good at putting these things together and following the narrative. And some, when movies have various maybe sort of themes or messages, I think I'm usually pretty good at picking them out, or even finding ones that weren't necessarily deliberate and stuff like that. And I don't know, this movie just makes me feel stupid. So I don't dislike it by really any stretch. I really don't know what happened in the movie. Like, it's not often I say that about a film I watch. I really, like, I understand in the very general sense what happened. I know that you guys, in working on some sort of experiment, wound up inadvertently creating a method of time travel, and then trying to debate whether or not it could be useful for them personally, and going about giving it a try, and having sort of a set of kind of rules and ethics in place to use it properly so that it wouldn't backfire horribly or hurt anyone, and how difficult that is. Like, I got that, and I get that it doesn't exactly end on a positive note. Things kind of get beyond their control. Like, so, I mean, I got the broad strokes, but I just hate to say that I really, once we're about 20 minutes in and it's established like that they have the ability to capacity time travel, I'm lost, because even though I read over and over again on Wikipedia and other sites like how the time travel works, Wikipedia even has a freaking diagram to explain it. I get lost once I'm into the second step. My brain I don't know why, my brain refuses to get this one. It's not like I wanted to do this movie when Jay suggested it, because I thought, I didn't know much about it. I knew it was from the mid-2000s, but I knew basically it was an independent movie that dealt with time travel, and I thought, time travel is not really something we've really talked about, even though it's something we both really enjoy as a plot device in movies. The closest we came to it was probably our episode on Donnie Darko, where time travel is one of the possible outcomes or whatever, or explanations for what we see in the movie, although there's other stuff too, like alternate universes and stuff. Although there's also the argument that every time you time travel, you're creating an alternate universe, or just going to an alternate universe. Like that's something that's kind of interesting about the movie, or the book. The movie's terrible. The book Timeline by Michael Crichton. The idea was they didn't really invent a time machine. They basically invented a machine that would take you to an alternate reality that was just the same as ours, except it was this far in the past. Because at that time they were like they found an alternate reality that was the same history as ours, just their history was further back at the time. Like things were supposed to proceed the same way. So it was more like they were physically going from like one place to another rather than just time travel. Although I didn't quite grasp that either, because there's stuff that they could physically do in that past, in that art, that would affect their present. Because there's a few times where they get some hidden messages, because the book takes place on these ruins of a medieval castle and town in France, and it's all about like this specific year. I don't know, sometime like in 1300 and stuff. And one of their lead people disappears into the past, and then they find like his glasses like in the ruins from like hundreds of years later, and they knew right off, his glasses are way too modern to come from that time period. And then they're like, no, it's the doctor's glasses and stuff like that. For the movie, of course, they make it much worse. They turn into some ridiculous rescue mission. They change the Chris character. Instead of being like one of the reasons I like the book is because like the characters are archaeologists and historians. They're academics and they're all into this, and they have that in the movie. But I think they thought that's like too intellectual for like movie audiences. They need somebody they can relate to. So instead, they take character Chris, who's an incredibly bookish and nerdy guy. They cast him as Paul Walker, and they make it clear that he's not an academic at all. He has no interest in any of this shit, and he's only there because the lead scientist is his father. And he even goes out of his way a few times to say he thinks history is dumb. Like, oh man.
Yeah, casting Paul Walker, I think, is your first mistake.
Yeah.
Not that I don't think he's a good actor, but I really hate when they, like Mark Wahlberg as a scientist and stuff. Like, come on, give me a break, guys. And what's that called? Timeline?
But especially because he passed away. Yeah, Timeline. Because he passed away tragically, and he was, by all accounts, a really great guy and stuff. I always did think he was a bad actor. I always thought he was one of the worst actors this generation. I can't think of anything he was good in, and I can think of a few things where I really thought he was like dragging the movie down, to be honest. But
well, I mean, when you look like that, I think you get a little bit of a pass.
Sure. I was thinking about some of that stuff today, and maybe we'll get into it later about looks and stuff like that. But to return to this movie, yeah, I feel really dumb because I watched this movie. I only did watch it the once, and I realized this is one of those movies where multiple watchings would help. But it's a very short movie, and I took well over 2 hours to watch it because I was stopping it not to do other things, but to read things and look up things. And even when things were explained right to me, I couldn't grasp it properly. So I don't know. So you've got these two main characters, Abe and Aaron, and they're, I don't know, engineers at some firm or something. But on the side, they like what they want to try to like invent stuff, and they're trying to. I don't even know what they're trying to do. They're trying to do something completely different, but I don't know what that is.
It's supposed to limit the effects of gravity on objects, and what it does is that actually works, but it also changes the effects of time.
Right. So within the field of this device they've made, they've altered it. It's like within this, the object in it like has its own sort of timeline, and they can control it with the box. They can move it forward or bring it back. And I know how they discovered. I followed up to this far. Like, I had a friend where they just discovered that they had like there was some sort of like fungus that was growing on the object, and it just grew at a pace that was way too fast for the short amount of time it was in there. And they realized it was because there was some sort of like time anomaly going on. So I mean, I followed it up to that far. But it gets to this point where it's like he makes a bigger one where a human can be in it, and then I'm completely lost from that point on. Like, I get that no, I don't. I really don't know. You get in the box, and then what? I don't know. So, and I don't know if they were going back in time or if they were going forward in time.
They're going back.
They're going back.
It's a type of time travel. It's like an A to B time loop to where you can go back in time as far as the box existed. So that's limited. Okay. That's what kind of is different than other forms of time travel. Yeah, so they can't
go like back to distant past.
Right.
Like, yeah, that's off the table.
It has to go back, and the box has to be on.
Yeah, there's a thing about like having a main box that's constantly running or something that I also didn't get.
The fail-safe box.
Yeah, towards the end, like we didn't know that he'd secretly created a fail-safe box that was always running. I didn't understand how that worked or what that meant either. I knew it was significant, but I didn't understand it.
Well, that's so he can go back and stop the entire thing if he needs to. See, Abe, the characters.
Okay, but
Aaron is.
Would that mean he would alter history for them completely? Like go back and stop them from ever doing it in the first place?
Right, or sabotage it or whatever to make sure it doesn't work. So they give up on it or whatever. You know,
so does that mean they would never have memories of ever doing it too? Would that disappear?
The ones that exist in that period wouldn't, but the ones that travel back.
Here's the other thing that loses me, and this is good in a way because it makes it different from other time travel movies. But every time you're traveling back, you're creating a different version of yourself, I guess.
But then you're going back to the future when you get back in the box, or I mean, you're going back to the past.
Yeah.
So it's so you've got this thing that you get in the box. Yeah. You get into the box now. And you set whatever timer or whatever, however long you're going back for, and you go back to that period. Or let's see, how does it work?
But I remember there was this whole thing about not wanting to run into your other self, so you would just they were sequestering themselves in hotel rooms,
right?
But I didn't know if that was before or after.
That's the ones that are in the hotel rooms are the ones from the past. You're coming from the past, and then you're existing in the future, but then you're going back to the past after you know what happens in the future. That's when they go and do all the stock market stuff, when they figure out the stocks,
which I also couldn't follow.
So there are two.
That was less important because I understood it just meant they could take advantage of knowledge and make money. Sure,
there are two that exist. I mean, at first that you think that's why this benefits from multiple watches, because you soon learn that there are multiple doubles around at the same time. Yeah. But if you don't get back in the box, and go back in the past, there will be two of you that exist.
Right. And they're trying to make sure that doesn't happen.
Right.
The whole idea is to not create that, and one of the alternate selves would disappear, I guess. And again, I don't know how this affects the memories of you, if you would share experiences and memories. It seems like they don't know what the other selves do or anything, so it's like completely separate. I mean, they have some interest. I like the movie because it does tackle some things like that don't get asked in other time travel movies, right? Like there's this thing where his phone is ringing. He's thinking, well, the other me exists at this point in time now too, and he would have a phone. So if someone calls us, whose phone would ring? Would it be both of us, or would it call him first? And they're trying to work it out. And he has an explanation. He's like, do you think that's true? And he's like, I don't know.
Well, that's when they discovered that they did something that did not affect the future. Like he answered the phone while there were two there. The one that was in the hotel room answered the phone when she was actually calling the other one.
Okay.
So that's when they discovered that they actually can do things that won't disrupt the space-time continuum or create a paradox or whatever. But so basically from what you first think, they're both going back. They go back one time, they get the stock quotes, then they go back to the past and make money. Then they go and do that again. And then Aaron, his ear starts to bleed.
Yeah, I remember that.
And that's one clue that that Aaron has been traveling a lot more than what you think. Because that's one of the side effects, obviously, of this thing that they have no idea how it would impact humans or a living being at all.
Yeah, there's all sorts of stuff that I just don't grasp. That I get that it was thought out, but I couldn't figure it out. Like there was this thing because it's also physically taxing on them because it's adding more hours to their days. Too. Mm-hmm. There's a normal 24-hour period since they're going back, and which is the other thing I don't get. If they're not creating a double of themselves, if they're experiencing it, so they're experiencing the extra hours too.
That's why they're in the hotel room. They're trying to not see anything that goes on. Like they're trying to not influence that.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it's interesting. It's because it's Abe that has kind of developed this the pattern and the way they're going to do things, all the rules. And Aaron is the more impulsive guy, the one that is just willing to go for it instead of planning it out and thinking it out. And Abe actually when he first shows Aaron what he did, he has created a failsafe box that is, at the very beginning, so he can go back and stop it all if he needs to, that he doesn't tell Aaron about.
Right.
But Aaron finds out about this when he sees the invoice with the 2 different rental spaces, inadvertently. And then he uses that box, and then he eventually creates his own failsafe box and goes back before Abe's, and then has his failsafe box set up going
back further, I guess.
So he can always go back before Abe.
Yeah. It turns into a weird little chess match between the 2 of them. And so like I said, I picked up on some of that, but again, just like what the actual details of what they were actually doing and what it was affecting was lost on me. I could not grasp it.
You don't find out
in a really
until
weird way too. They just decide to sort of go their separate ways, and they realize there's multiple doubles of themselves out there. They seem to have their own agendas, which I really don't understand because you're still the same person. But this seems to suggest that these other versions of themselves aren't necessarily the same person. Like they would have different agendas and even conflicting agendas. But they seem to be in conflict with each other, which there doesn't seem to be an explanation for. But at the same time, I don't fault the movie for that because they don't necessarily have to give you one, because I guess it's possible because we don't know because the whole thing's hypothetical. But I don't know. It just sort of got all dropped on me in the last 15 minutes.
Yeah. When you have 3 Aarons existing in the same time, who gets to go on living as Aaron, with his family and everything. That's, how did the 3 decide that? But one goes to France, and then I don't know what the other one does. But
that whole pivotal meeting they have on the park bench where he thinks he's meeting one version, but it's another version. Again, I had to read about that to understand it because I couldn't figure out that just because he had an ear. I don't understand the earpiece thing. I don't know what that means. He just seems to be telling another version of himself what to say because he already has been through these conversations. So what? He's telling him the best thing to say for the conversation is. I don't understand that. Why does it matter that he said different things?
What's playing in his ear is the future by a
few seconds,
whatever minutes or whatever it is. So he knows what's supposed to happen. So he's supposed to do the same thing that he did before, exactly the same way.
But wouldn't you only need to know these details if you want to change things and make things different? And here's the other thing. Are they trying, how sometimes there's something in a time travel movie where there's some sort of event that's kind of important or, and, well, not important, but an event they talk about. And then later on you find out that, they were the cause of it. Is that what's going on with this party thing? Because, at one point in the movie, they just say something like one of their girlfriends or something was at a party where some guy showed up with a gun and it got really dicey, but she got away and nobody got hurt or something. And then towards the end of the movie, they seem to be trying to make it happen, and I don't understand why.
Well, what he did, Aaron stopped the guy, he took the gun from him or whatever, but he wasn't satisfied with that because the guy didn't wind up going to jail. He wanted the guy to get some consequences or something. Yeah. So that's one problem I did have with the film is why they focused on that.
And they seem to talk about this idea that they had to run through it a few times so that he knew the right way to do it.
Yeah,
which makes sense. Which I get. It's kind of like the same thing. Okay, let's say, it's a different movie. There's an assassination. You want to go back in time to stop the assassination. Right. You go back in time. You fail. So then you go back again, and you just keep watching until you get the timing down, so you know exactly what to do to stop the assassin. That all makes sense to me. But then in the movie, they don't show any of it. I mean, again, this is sort of a budget thing. A lot of stuff is just talked about and never shown.
The party stuff, I think, is really just a throwaway item anyway. It's really a stupid thing to just, I guess, just continue the plot along.
It tricked me. I thought that was what the movie hinged on. I thought that was their hidden bomb. I thought it was, it's all because of this event. And then they just hand wave it, and it's anyway, now they're going to go their separate ways, and they have these problems with duplicates of themselves out in the world with this time knowledge. So it tricked me because I thought, okay, this is what it's all actually about. This event, they're trying to change it, or I don't know, or I thought, they created it in the first place because it somehow benefits them. I thought it was that kind of time loop thing, right? You hear about something that happened, you move on, then you find out, they're the reason it happened. They created it, but no, they didn't create it. They just tweaked it.
Yeah. I don't know why he was so concerned with changing his actions in that. I mean, I don't know. It seems like a little thing to go back and spend all this time on to change.
And it would have been more cool if it showed like failed attempts or he like screws up and the guy like blows somebody's head off or something, but that never happens or even gets talked about and stuff. So yeah, I realized the movie had budget constraints, so that's why it's very short and a lot of stuff doesn't happen on screen. So I don't want to pick it apart too much because they did the best they could with it. But I'm just saying you already have a really complicated plot, and then you have all this stuff that doesn't even happen on screen, and then they just sort of talk about. I know they're trying to fix it with like some of that weird narration that's going on. But that didn't help me. It didn't help me. I don't know. Again, I don't hate this movie, and I'm not calling it a bad movie by any stretch. I feel like the fault is with me. I think other people can grasp this better than me. I don't know why I have some sort of mental block, but as soon as I start reading about like how it works, like something doesn't work, and I don't know why, because I'm a veteran of this stuff. Time travel is a pretty normal thing for me, and I guess it's refreshing that this is a different approach. And I feel stupid that I can't wrap my head around this approach.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as they talk about going into the box, I can't figure it out.
It's
because there's something about just sitting around for 6 hours, and I don't know why that is necessary.
It's just so you don't come into contact with anyone, and you don't learn anything about the future, because you don't want it to affect you. So you don't want to come in contact with yourself, and that's all theoretical. They don't know if they do anything. Will it make a difference anyway? It's all.
Yeah, but if they're traveling back to the past, right? Like not the distant past, but the past that they're still in, right? Like that's what they're doing at first, right? They're going back in time. How does that benefit them in any way to go back in time? They're not changing anything. They're just sending a version of themselves back in time, and then their other version is hanging out so they don't run into each other. And I don't understand what is getting accomplished. I don't understand what they're doing that's making anything happen. I understand going to the future, finding out some stock stuff, coming back with the knowledge and using that.
Yeah.
But I don't understand the going back stuff. They talk about going back all the time. I'm like, well, what are you doing? You're not changing anything. You're saying you won't change anything. So what is the benefit?
Going back and changing something?
Well, are they changing something? I didn't know they were changing things. I thought the whole point was not change things.
When they started using the failsafe devices, they were, because, like, when they saw Granger, do you remember the character of Granger? That's Aaron's father-in-law.
And it totally confused me.
They see this guy, and he saw him earlier that day, and he was cleanly shaven. Now he's got like a few days growth of beard.
Well, this indicates that this character must have used it at some point.
So they know
but again, that never gets explained. We don't know how he found out about it. We don't know why he would use it.
But that's when they both go use their failsafes, because they're both trying to go outmaneuver the other at that point. Abe is going back to try to stop everything because it's obviously gone off the rails. And then Abe is going back to do that, and then Aaron's going back to stop Abe from doing that. But at that point, there's three Aarons, because there's the one that went back to when he went back and then he knocked himself out and put his that self in the attic.
Yeah, I had no idea why
his wife is constantly talking about there being rats in the attic, but it's not rats, it's him. He's locked up in the attic. I
figured that out, but again, I had no idea why these multiple versions of themselves were in conflict. It didn't make any sense to me. Like, I don't know why.
It's to change what they're going to do. I think is why he does that. So he can be one step ahead of Abe. Is that point that he's got the recordings, and he's trying to outmaneuver him. And I don't know if this is some sort of maybe like psychological damage from the time travel that makes him so like paranoid and feel the need to do these things. Because Abe's just trying to stop everything from even happening, just so it wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
But Aaron obviously has other ideas in mind. But that's all. Talking about all that's really like confusing.
So, but yeah, the park bench thing. He's got pre-recordings of past conversations in an earpiece.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what that accomplishes. Just to trick him into thinking he's a different version of himself?
So he doesn't know that he is that version of himself.
But I don't know. But they're exactly the same. How would anybody know?
I don't know.
If I met a version of myself from 4 hours ago or whatever, how in any way would he be any different from me to anybody else that ever met me? He'd be completely identical. It's not like, you know, a 20-year older version of myself. We're talking about hours here.
Maybe it wouldn't be, though. Maybe it wouldn't be the same.
I guess, but what would be the difference then?
I don't know.
Yeah. It hurts my head. So here's the time travel loop thing. I'm looking at it on Wikipedia, and as soon as we get into the time machine starts and the double exits. So original waits out 6 hours of subjective time. And that's the other thing that's always difficult. And I mean, I get, and I like it because too many time travel movies and things like that always treat time travel like it's not time travel. They always treat it like you're just going from one physical place to another physical place. Because here's something that's always kind of interesting. You have the time travel plot where, okay, it doesn't matter if it's the past or the future. We'll say it's the past. You have a group of people, team, whatever, and several of them, although not all of them, go to some point in the past, really far, we'll say, you know, hundreds of years ago, to accomplish some goal, right? Meanwhile, there's a few that stay in the present. Now, there's always a point in these basic things where they'll be like, they've been gone for 6 hours. They should have been back by now. That doesn't make any sense, right? They're not on the same time. They're in a past time. In fact, if they accomplish their mission, they could just come back 2 seconds or whatever after they did it, and it's already over. But they always make it sound like the past isn't the past. It's just another place where time continues to move in the same way. You know, I always liked it like in Back to the Future, where it's like, I've been living in 1885 happily for the past 6 months. That's true, but it doesn't mean anything to Marty because this is already 200 years later or 100 years later and stuff like that. I mean, but I mean, like I said, I give this movie a credit for trying to cover some of those bases because, I mean, probably my favorite time travel stuff is Back to the Future, at least in a general sense, and everybody knows that movie breaks its own rules. It does all sorts of things that actually wouldn't work by its own rules, but there's still some pretty funny stuff to think about in that movie. Like at one point during the second movie, there is a point in history where there are as many as 6 DeLoreans all in the same general area.
Wow.
You know, which is pretty funny. I remember my friend Shane and I analyzed all that years ago. I forget a lot of the details now, but some of it is pretty funny. Plus, then you have somebody like Doc that says, like, you know, you can't alter the past, and then he goes about altering the past like crazy, which happens all the time in movies too, where they always talk about how you can't do it, and then they do it anyway.
Yeah.
And I don't mean the person that didn't listen to him. I mean the person that says the rule. They wind up doing it sometimes even more than anybody else. So, I mean, yeah, that's the main thing that bothers me about like a lot of the lazier time travel stuff. They really just treat time travel more like just going to another place instead of going to another time, even though that's the whole point. It's especially lazy when they do it where you get in a time travel machine, and not only does it move you back in time, but it moves you through space too. Why would it move you through space? It's not that kind of machine. You know, you can't, like, they always, like, you're in a lab in California and you jump into a machine. You're like, I want to go back to see, I don't know, the Lincoln assassination. Okay, you go back to 1865, but you're still in California. You're not where the Lincoln assassination took place. But in a lot of these things, they just move them through space too.
Well, can't you make a setting on the DeLorean where you are? Or is it?
Well, that's the good thing about Back to the Future. In Back to the Future, they don't go through space. They're always in the same place.
Oh, they are? Okay. Yeah.
I mean, that's the point, right? You just see different versions of the same town. You see the town in 1985, in 1955, and 1885. They never leave the town.
But all the stuff that happened, it did affect the future and Back to the Future. Like wasn't it like Twin Pines Mall at first? And
they alter all sorts of stuff. Yeah, exactly. But
I mean, it's like an episode of The Simpsons where like everyone like has gills or some shit in the future.
Yeah.
You know, when you go back.
I mean, that's a lot of that's the joke, right? It's like, you know, this small event happened, but it drastically altered this and that. But again, it doesn't really. But if you want to pick apart Back to the Future, which I mean, a million people have done, and we all acknowledge, you know, it's more of a fantasy movie than a hard sci-fi movie, so there's not much point. But it's like some of these changes, like they don't necessarily logically follow in any way, shape, or form. Really, like the fact that, like, you know, his parents have like a better marriage because he went back and, I don't know, beat up their bully for them. and stuff like that. It somehow like completely altered like their lives. Plus, there's just some weird coincidences. Like, how come by the time Marty's 16 or 17, they don't realize he looks and sounds exactly like the mysterious teenager they met back in 1955? That seems kind of odd. Like, he doesn't just look a little like him; he looks exactly like him, and he has the same voice too. But again, like I said, I'm not criticizing those movies because they're just fantasy anyway. And I get mad with certain time travel stuff when it seems lazy. So I like this movie because it's really trying to, cover the bases, dot the I's and cross the T's and stuff like that, and answer legitimate questions that this would pose.
Right.
And I just feel like an idiot because I couldn't follow it.
Well, that's why I like this film, because the film, like, Back to the Future kind of just washes over the actual technology, and this film tries to at least, talk about the possibility, of what might happen. I mean, a little bit there. I don't know how accurate any of that stuff is, but time travel is. I mean, the Back to the Future is like, okay, we've got a flux capacitor and we've got to go 88 miles an hour. So that's it. That's all we need.
Yeah.
But it's like Sound of Thunder. That's one of my favorites, and that made a terrible movie out of that too.
Oh, yeah. I don't think I saw the movie.
Yeah, it's nothing like the story. But it's like he steps on a butterfly or something, right? And that changes like everything in the future.
Yeah, that's the thing that The Simpsons was parodying in that Treehouse of Horror special. I like that. That's one of my favorite things is when Homer uses it for the first time and he goes back to like dinosaur times. And he goes, "All right, Homer, don't panic. Just think back to what your father told you on your wedding day." And suddenly it's a shot of Abe in like a tux or whatever, clearly on his wedding day. It says, "If you ever travel back in time for some reason, don't step on anything because it could have dire consequences for the future." I love how that's his wedding day advice from his father. Beautiful.
That's an interesting concept too. It's
the butterfly effect. They made a movie with Ashton Kutcher based on that.
It wasn't bad.
It wasn't bad. I liked it more back when it came out because like the characters were basically my age, so they were like flashing back to 1995 when I was like the same age, like 12. Yeah. I remember being 12 when 7 came out, and like posters for 7 and stuff like that. But then, the movie doesn't hold up too well on multiple watches, but still, it's not too bad.
Yeah, I think it's probably pretty dated.
Amy Smart, anyway. Amy Smart was around for a while in the mid 2000s and then disappeared.
She did a couple of Crank movies, didn't she?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
I remember. Yeah, she's in. Yeah, you're right.
Road Trip. It's like a hardcore sex scene. I think she's got in one of the Crank films.
She does. It's like him, like to keep his heart rate up. He like bangs her in like front of a crowd of people, and everyone's cheering. Everyone's like, "Yeah!" That's like all I remember from that movie.
Yeah, that's what High Voltage. I think Crank 2. Yeah. Those movies are batshit crazy.
I don't think I saw the first one. I think I saw the second one with that scene. So, yeah. Anyway, I'm smart. But
didn't they make 2 Ghost Rider movies? I think those guys did the second Ghost Rider.
The second Ghost Rider is somehow even worse than the first, but it does have one amazing scene with like a crane that he like takes over like with his flaming powers. It's worth just watching that scene. They're like in a big like gravel pit with one of those big like cranes and diggers and stuff, and he like channels his like, I don't know, spirit stuff, fire through it, and it goes all flames, and he's controlling it. It's really cool. The rest of the movie is absolute garbage, but hopefully they'll do another Ghost Rider movie sometime that fits into the MCU.
Hopefully Nick Cage is not in it.
Yeah. I mean, I like Nick Cage, and it was nice that Nick Cage, unlike a lot of these other actors, had real enthusiasm for it. Like, he genuinely likes the Ghost Rider comics. So that's nice, but still.
Well, he's a comic guy, I think.
Yeah. Oh, super. He named his son Kal-El, so yeah.
That's pretty hardcore.
Yeah. Even I wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Not that I wouldn't use comic book names.
You can find a better name than that.
Yeah. Our friend Ryan just had his 3rd child, and he doesn't plan on having any more, but I told him if he somehow does, I get to name it, because I've never wanted to have kids, but that's the great tragedy of me not having kids, besides my awesome genes being passed on to a next generation, is that I don't get to name anything. Like, I have all these awesome names. Like, I have one really big rule, which is I would never, and I don't care if people do this, this is just for me, and that was I will not reuse any name from my family, or if the woman I'm with, nothing from her family. No reusing names. I don't like that. I don't like naming people after people. It's
like
just
Lord Zed or something like that would be a cool name.
yeah. See, honestly, I would have cool names, but they wouldn't be like weird, crazy names that were like the judge tells you can't do it. They would be names.
Like Hitler. This is Hitler Jr.
Yeah, I mean that was a real case a few years ago, right? Like literally, two like white supremacists somewhere in the States tried to name their kid like something Hitler.
Did they not let him do it?
And they didn't let them do it.
Why?
Because it would because there are like rules about like if names would bring like a certain amount of strife into a person's life. What's really weird though is like
child abuse.
Well, yeah, well, you know, imagine you were called that like against your will everywhere.
Yeah, but I mean, Hitler was a surname. I mean, in Austria, I guess. So I mean, there are probably still people out there, but
I'm pretty sure they all changed it.
They all changed it.
He's an extreme example, right?
Sure.
Like people can be called like Bundy and stuff like that. You know, I mean, it's a name. Don't let them ruin it. But Hitler was, you know, a guy that caused genocide on a mass scale. So he's massive, right? He's arguably the most important figure of the 20th century as far as having an effect on the world. I mean, you could argue different people for that, but you know what I mean? Like Hitler's actions literally affected millions of people,
Sure.
Not just then, but right up to now. So that will be an extreme example. But what's weird, if you look it up, each state has its own list of like, and countries too, have their own list of names they won't allow.
Really?
And most of them make a lot of sense, but some of them you're like, why not? Like, it's completely harmless. It's really weird. I remember reading about only a few months ago. There are certain countries and places that like have like lists of names they won't allow, and some of them, yeah, you get it, but some of them you're just like, I don't see the harm in that whatsoever. But anyway,
what if they're like, okay, how about Mussolini?
that's their compromise, I suppose.
Stalin, come on.
Yeah, I don't know what they wound up eventually doing, but I know for that thing, yeah, they were hardcore white supremacists. A couple, you know, Nazi tattoos, all of them, and stuff like that, and yeah, they wanted to call their kid, yeah, something Hitler Jones or whatever.
I could still call him Hitler.
Yeah, I mean, it could be his nickname. What are you going to do about that?
That's right. Beat that government.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny the way people talk about names. Especially, like, my favorite thing is, like, there's certain people, one of the reasons, like, they don't like superhero stuff, and there's nothing wrong with not liking superhero stuff. It's not your stuff. But a lot of people say, you know, it's just so stupid, like, having those stupid names, like Spider-Man and stuff like that. And I'm like, yeah, but if they existed, you would totally accept it.
Yeah.
There's no way you wouldn't. And I know, especially if you're a criminal or like a hardcore bad guy and you're watching, you're like I couldn't imagine like fighting some kid in a spandex suit and having to call him Robin. Well, I guess you didn't have to call him Robin, but you have to call him something. Because there he is. He does exist. He's kicking the shit out of you. He's causing you problems. He's got a big R on his thing. Batman's calling him Robin. So maybe you want to keep up with your hateful nicknames, but you're gonna just acknowledge, like, that's the thing. If colorful superhero vigilantes existed, we would use the names they offer us. Because what would the alternative be? We don't know the real names. Because it's one thing if you have a friend and your friend says, "Hey, from now on, call me Tiger Spike." We all be like, "Fuck you, you're Daryl. That's your name, you know." You're Daryl, and you're not getting a cool nickname. But it's completely different in that. Plus, we already live in a world where any dumbass musician, usually a rapper, can just give themselves any dumbass name. Yeah. We all think it's super normal.
Or like Sting.
Yeah.
You know? Or fucking, what's the guy in U2? Edge.
The Edge. He's the Edge. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess when you're a super rock star, you can kind of get away with it, but it also makes you think, like, how high of opinion do you have yourself? You're already like this badass guitarist in one of the biggest bands in the world, but you have to be known as The Edge and always wear sunglasses. Or actually, Bono's the one that always wears sunglasses.
All right, guys, you got to call me Dragon.
Of course, yeah. I mean, U2 is maybe the best example because it's 2 of the 4 do that. Yeah. 2 of the 4 that gave themselves awesome names. Bono, which means good voice. Okay, Bono. And The Edge because he's, I don't know.
I didn't know Bono. What language is that?
I think it's Latin.
But
because
it's a stupid name.
He's really smart too. You have to let that the Bono's totally smart. He's better than you. I think that's the main message Bono wants to get across is he's better than you.
Sure. When's the last time U2 released anything worth a damn?
The last time they released anything was hilarious because remember it just showed up on it just automatically showed up on everybody's iTunes.
Right.
Like, whether you wanted it or not, you had the new U2 album. Because they'd reached that level of success. They didn't need money anymore. Just like everybody can have it, but it's not just anybody can have it. Everybody will have it. And I was like, I just want to delete this. I don't want this.
Yeah, I would delete the hell out of it. I'm not a fan.
Yeah, I've never been a U2 fan. They're one of the biggest bands that I don't think they're bad, but I've never understood why like they're super loved. But their stuff is good. But I remember actively disliking them in 2001. They had an album that came out in 2001 that was half sort of greatest hits and half a new album, and I really hated those songs on it. Particularly, there was one, I think it was called Vertigo, that basically has the exact same tune as one of those like songs by like Diana Ross and the Supremes, and nobody ever pointed that out. He's like, "Hello, hello, blah blah blah, Vertigo," and I'm like, wait a second, isn't that "Get Out My Life"? Why don't you, babe? Get out my life. Why don't you, babe? Ooh, 'cause you don't really love me. You just keep me hanging. It's the same tune, but nobody seemed to have pointed that out. But anyway, I'm getting really off track here.
It's like an Under Pressure Vanilla Ice thing.
Yeah. What's funny is like for most people, you just assume like, okay, he's sampling, but he didn't even ask permission.
No.
That had to be settled later. Like he just thought, oh, it's fine to do this without getting the rights or permission. I think.
What did Ray Parker Jr. have any problems with that? He took one of Huey Lewis and the News songs, didn't he?
Yeah, for Ghostbusters. Mm-hmm. Ghostbusters is basically a rip-off of I Want a New Drug.
Mm. I'm willing to bet someone got sued in that deal.
Oh, yeah.
It's such a... I mean, it's a huge song and a huge movie. Like, how stupid is that? Yeah. I mean, Vanilla Ice didn't know his song was going to be big, but, I mean, like, this movie... I mean, this is going to be in a movie.
Yeah. I don't know. What's funny is there's a lot of songs out there that weren't even necessarily big, but still, and it's a tough thing. It's all, you look up the list of these songs that had lawsuits. It's always a hard thing because sometimes you're genuinely not trying to steal anything.
Yeah.
It's just, there's only so much music out there. I keep saying, like an insane person. But,
know what I'm saying?
But George Harrison, like one of his best songs is just, again, a ripoff of like a Motown song too. Remember My Sweet Lord? It's like, My Sweet Lord, da 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 da, My Sweet Lord. Anyway, it's one of his big songs. And it's the exact same tune. It's not just the exact same tune, but it's the exact same like cadences as He's So Fine. Where it's like, he's so fine. Wish She Were Mine. It's the exact same song, and it's one of his like biggest hits. I mean, I like that song a lot, and I guess you could add something because that's the children singing "Alleluia" or whatever in the background. And I mean, it does get different later, where I really want to see you and stuff. But I mean, that's one of his biggest hits, and it's an obvious ripoff of a well-known song. And I mean, he's George Harrison. He's a fucking Beatle, and yet even he did it.
I mean, maybe it was inadvertent, Maybe he had heard that song and liked it a lot.
Exactly right. Sometimes, it's inadvertent. You heard it maybe, but you had no idea you did hear it. Like you completely forgot that you ever heard it. Like there's tons of songs that I only heard bits and pieces of. So it's very easy to subconsciously write it into the melody you're doing. Well, I mean, that's what happened with say like Radiohead. I don't think Radiohead was trying to rip off the Hollies, but that's another. You know how everybody talks about how Radiohead hates Creep and never plays it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, another reason why is because they didn't make any money from the song because they had to give like almost all their money. They had to give songwriting credits and most of their money to the Hollies because that song "Creep" basically has the same has that incremental sort of build up before you get into the chorus. Is the same thing as "The Air That I Breathe" by the Hollies from the 70s.
Oh, I didn't know that. I'll have to look that up.
Yeah, the Hollies are a cool band. They're one of the more forgotten bands of like the British invasion, although they were around at the same time as all these. What's weird about the Hollies is they never really had like a really great album. They just had several really big songs that were all spread out on different albums. Like I guess maybe they're most known for "He Ain't Heavy, He's My Brother," which everybody knows. But that's like that album. I remember looking that up, and that's like the only good song on the album. So, yeah, I always like the Hollies. Very good vocal harmonies. Nowadays, bands don't care about vocal harmonies anymore. It's completely lost.
It's all synthesizer and auto-tune. And...
I mean, bands are lucky if they have one guy that can sing, and sometimes they don't even have one.
Yeah, like you need to sing, and you don't need to be talented anymore.
Yeah. And then there's that really weird valley of, there is a difference between somebody that just can't sing and somebody that can sing but has a bad voice. Because you can actually be a capable singer in that you have like a sense of tone and that you hit the note properly, but your voice is just shit.
Mm-hmm.
The best example for me is both of them. Because both two guys sing, is Blink-182. Blink-182 has two different guys, not the drummer, the other two, the guitarist and the bassist, who both, for I guess depending on which song, who wrote which song, sing lead for songs. Both of them sing fine in that they hit notes, they know how to sing, but their voices are garbage.
Don't they have that weird, like it's like I don't know what that accent is, but it's like a whiny. Don't they sing in that like nasally?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There was a lot of that sort of like
Ugh.
power pop punk from like the late 90s, early 2000s that they were
Some
like
41.
they were like pioneers from. Yeah, from 41. That's the Canadian contribution.
Oh, really?
Yeah. What's funny, I'm so mad. It's okay. So for about 2 years, Sum 41 were actually one of the biggest bands in the world. Like right around 2003, 2004, because one of their songs got on like I think American Pie 2 soundtrack, and anyway, they just exploded. So or it was actually maybe a year or two earlier than that. I had a chance to see them like in 2000 or something. I was like in grade 11. And I remember like they were opening for a well-known band, Trouble Charger, who actually were sort of their mentors. And like almost all these people that I knew were going to the show, and my mother wouldn't let me go because I had a history test the next night. And like history was the next day. History's my best subject. I had like a 97 average in IB history, but my mom wouldn't let me go. And yeah, so like I remember a couple of the girls that I knew who were in the same history class as me saying how they went and they hung out on the bus with them. And this was like literally months before Sum 41 like just exploded, like in as big as it can get, because and I'm just because not just in the Canadian way. I mean, they were on MTV and Americans knew who they were and stuff. And this was just a few months before that, and I didn't get to go to that show. I mean, I was never a big Sum 41 fan, but I mean, I would have gone for Trouble Charger. I like Trouble Charger a lot. But yeah, so it's annoying. But yeah, what's funny is just the other day on Twitter, I guess it was the I don't know, the anniversary of I guess it's the 20th anniversary of Blink-182's breakthrough album, the 99 one, Enema of the State, and everyone was talking to us. Just like Blink-182 were so, even back then I found them annoying. Like they could do catchy hooks and stuff, and their drummer's actually quite talented.
Yeah, the drummer is talented.
It's one of the most tattooed people I've ever seen, and that's saying something. Like every inch of him is tattooed, to the point where like you can't tell anything apart. Like being that tattooed kind of ruins the effect, because it's like, yeah, if you're looking really closely, you see the detail, but from far away, it's like looks like a bizarre painted man.
There are guys that are, they'll do one leg all black ink. I don't know why, but I don't know if they're gonna go back and do a brand in there or something. Because they do a lot of body mod stuff like that.
Anyway, I just thought it was interesting. If Blink-182 were a rare band, I mean, there's a few bands out there, but a rare band that had more than one lead singer. They had two guys that would sing lead, and both of them technically, in the technical sense, could sing, like, but their voices are garbage, both in different ways. The more was the lesser guy, the guitarist. The bassist is the guy that did like "What's My Age Again" and stuff like that. He did more of the bigger hits. He was bad too, but the more whiny guy was the other guy.
I was never a fan.
Yeah, I always found them annoying. And I mean, I was kind of soft on some of that pop punk stuff. I could stand some of that Green Day imitators. I didn't hate it all, but no, I was not into
it. I mean, I guess I love Green Day, but Green Day kind of
formed that movement, though. I mean, honestly,
right.
that whole pop punk thing almost entirely came from just Green Day.
But their sound kind of changed over the years too. Like I was going back and looking, man. Like
it makes sense, right?
Yeah, but you have to either change or fade away.
Yeah.
But it's like Pearl Jam. They sound like nothing like what they used to. They sound like a damn jam band or something now, like a folk music.
Yeah, he's gotten really folky. I like folk music, but I just feel like there's almost no good folk music from like the last 40 years. Like all the best folk music was from like the 60s and 70s, and then like nobody could do folk anymore.
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, like the first 4 albums of Green Day are like solid. or from Dookie on. I don't know if they had anything before Dookie, but
yeah, I think they did. It was it was the closest to like a more pure punk sound, and nobody cared about that because they weren't particularly good at it.
It's like, man, these guys are British and they're awesome. But no, they're not.
No. Okay.
When you sing, can you sound British?
Yeah, Billy Joel Armstrong really kind of had that. And what's funny is the irony is like so many British bands don't sound at all British.
Right.
Like one of the only British singers I can think of that really you could hear his accent when he sang was Gavin Rossdale. You hear any Bush song, and you really hear his British accent. But that's usually not the case with most of these bands. The accent, they could have like the harshest accent you hear in the interviews, but then when they sing, they sound like some generic American or Canadian.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Do you have the time?
I went back and revisited all that maybe a year or so ago. I think we talked about it.
Yeah.
But
I know the American Idiot album was a big deal. And that's not recent, but that's not old. That's like, what, 2005, maybe? That was a really big album for them. That was almost like a comeback for
them.
I actually liked a lot of the songs on Warning, and I think Warning was where a lot of people jumped ship and were like, oh, they suck now. Warning was like, I don't know, earlier 2000s.
I'm sure I had it.
Had a song called Warning on it. It had a few other songs. I thought they were cool songs, but a lot of people, I think, were fed up at that point. They're like, oh, fuck this. Oh, I think Warning wasn't bad.
Which one was the one that had the, what was their huge song that was like not typical at all of them? That I played at everyone's like college graduations and stuff. Time.
Oh, Time of Our Life.
Yeah.
Time of Your Life or whatever. Yeah.
Was that on?
It was on, I think, the 99 one. Or no, earlier than 99. It would have had to have been 98.
Yeah. Was it played at my graduation in 99? So.
Yeah, for me, I was in grade 9 for that, so it was my junior high graduation song, which was funny because I remember like I barely ever went to parties or anything like that, but I went to this coincided just around a girl I was friends with had a big birthday party, and it was basically towards the end of almost the end of the school year, and it was the end of grade 9, so a lot of people would be moving on and stuff. And I remember they played that song like a bunch of times at it, and everyone was getting all emotional. But I'm like, it's just junior high, and like almost all of you are going to Riverview.
Right.
So you're all going to be together. I'm the one who's leaving because I was going to go back to Sydney, go to Sydney Academy. They didn't care about me. I'm like, you're all going to see each other. I'm the one who's leaving. I wasn't the only one, but I was one of the only ones.
97.
Okay, yeah.
Let's see, what album was that on? Yeah, why would you be I mean, that was on Nimrod.
Right, Nimrod. That's what I couldn't think of the name.
That was a good one. That was a good album.
Yeah.
I didn't care for that song. I never did, but that was a good album.
I think Nimrod has my favorite song by them. I just got to look at the... Yeah, my favorite song is Nice Guys Finish Last, which is on Nimrod. That's always been my favorite Green Day song.
Hitching a Ride is on there, too. That one's good.
Yeah.
So,
they were still, like, they were basically at their peak making this album.
Yeah.
Even though there's a bunch of songs on it that I don't remember at all. But the ones you do remember are good. But yeah, Hitching a Ride. But, Nice Guys Finish Last is the first track. Yeah. That's always been my favorite Green Day song. But when you said, like, not typical of them at all, I thought the one that was on America, or, I don't know. Remember the one that was really emotional and about, like, I don't know, like a soldier or something going off to war?
Wow, yeah, that's...
They played the hell out of that video, and it was like watching, like, a shortened version of The Notebook. Like, holy shit.
I may have tuned out at that point.
Like, Wake Me Up When September Comes. I don't know if that was the name of the song, but that was like the refrain, Wake Me Up When... Like, that song, man. I just thought it was so heavy-handed. That happens every once in a while with an artist you like, where, like, they just sort of, like, go way too hard on the sap. Like, I'm not literally a fan of Bryan Adams. Bryan Adams made pretty good songs, and then he did the, Everything I Do It For You song, which is ridiculously over-the-top sappy. And, of course, it was great, for his career, and that, like, it did great. But, I mean, I think most people that were used to his, like, his sort of power pop 80s jam stuff, and, not jam, and power ballads and stuff were probably pretty upset by, like, this overly sappy ballad that was just, ugh. Sarah McLachlan kind of did with that Eyes of the Angel song.
Was that the one that plays when the animals. They show the animals.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I said. The irony is often some of these people, it's like the song they wind up being most known for, even though it's actually really kind of outside what they did beforehand. Like
I couldn't tell you anything Sarah McLachlan did besides that.
Yeah, see,
that's what I know that name.
I think that's how it is for most Americans anyway. But in Canada, she was a very big star.
Oh, she's Canadian. Okay.
Yeah. She's from here. She's from Halifax.
Oh wow, I didn't realize that.
Not that she ever fucking comes back here. But yeah, I like a lot of Sarah McLachlan songs, and it's not like she's a piano player and she would do ballads and stuff like that. So it's not like she wouldn't do something in that vibe. But Angel is just so over the top. That way, yeah. There's a few artists that have like a song like that. Fucking Aerosmith did it again for a soundtrack. They didn't even write it, but it was their biggest hit. The Armageddon one. Don't Want to Miss a Thing. Like that song, you must remember. Don't miss.
I would hear it if I heard it, but I know I would remember it if I heard it.
I can sing a lot of songs. I can't sing Aerosmith songs. The only way I can do it. The only way I can do it is like really mockingly. So I'll be like, "Don't want to close my eyes."
Oh, is that it? Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know.
Fall asleep because I miss you, babe, and I don't want to miss a thing.
Sucks.
Yeah, it's awful.
I was kind of like anti that when that shit came out. Yeah, I was.
And it was their biggest hit ever.
I was like, I was like into like hardcore like
and that's
metal and stuff at that time.
When it comes to a lot of these artists, they'll be pretty good artists and they'll have good, but then their biggest hit is like some like completely shitty, sappy, radio-friendly garbage, and it's what they become known for. And yet, the true fans kind of hate them for it. Like I figure most Aerosmith fans, like the true Aerosmith fans, were not pleased about that song because it's so sappy and stupid, and they didn't even write it. Somebody else wrote it. Like, why was Aerosmith the band to do that? What's funny is I always thought it had like this weird country twang to it. Some like country artists did cover it, and he does put the whole country twang on it. He's like, "Don't want to close my eyes because I'd miss you." He just says "miss you." He doesn't say "miss you, babe." I don't think country songs use the term "babe," which is weird because they'll say "baby," but they won't say "babe." Country has such a limited vocabulary. There's just all sorts of words that just will not show up in a country song. Seems sad and limiting, but what's that?
The N-word, they use that a lot.
Well, that's the other thing. They just have words they use over and over again, like truck
and dog and drink. Oh yeah, that's big here. So it's
yeah. I mean,
my wife's a big fan of country music.
Oh wow.
I'm not
there's
some that I like, but
I have to give you credit then, because like. I mean, I don't want to be that kind of person, but I honestly don't think I could even date somebody that was a big fan of country.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is, like, she likes like a lot of the newer stuff that's coming out. The new stuff is just absolute garbage. Like, I mean, there's some stuff that's halfway decent out there, but most of it is.
I'm the wrong person to talk to. I mean, I'm not usually this close-minded. I think I'm pretty eclectic with my musical taste, but for country, nothing. I hate it all. The closest thing I like to country is like a Canadian group called actually Blue Rodeo, which is a very country name, which are sort of like a country pop rock type of thing. They've been around, and they have some twang in there, but a completely different singer. You know, that generic male country voice? None of that. Like the singer Jim Cuddy, completely different voice. He's a great singer too, Jim Cuddy. God, he must be old as hell by now. I've been acting since the late '80s. But
country music has gotten very poppy, and that is just absolutely awful to me. But no, there's some stuff I like.
That seemed to really start with like Faith Hill. Like Faith Hill was like this much country and this much pop, and yet she was like billed as a country artist, and I think a lot of people followed that.
I mean, Taylor Swift was a country artist at one time.
Yeah, that's what she started as when she was like a teenager, and then she's like, "Shake it off, shake it off."
So was I mean, a lot of people have started like that, or gone back and forth between the two.
Shania Twain is kind of like the queen of the crossover in that she's like the balance of country and pop. Also Canadian.
Like Michelle Branch, you remember her? She's the one that da-na-na-na-na-na on the piano.
Yeah. I remember Michelle Branch.
She's done country albums.
She had a song called Everything, which I really like. And actually, speaking of like power, like punk pop that I actually like, I liked the band Yellow Card. Yellow Card does a really good cover of that song. The other thing I didn't like her for was I remember like when she came out, she was very young. She was like 19, 20 and stuff. So, and I was 14 or something like that. Anyway, I thought she was very pretty. And I knew I wasn't going to date her, just like I wasn't going to date any of these girls. But then, like, I found out, like, when she was, like, 20, she married her bassist, who at the time was 40. So I don't know if they're still married, but, ugh, because she's, like, going to be 40 now. So I hope she's enjoying her 60-year-old husband.
Oh, wow, they're still married? Wow.
I don't know. Maybe. Probably not. But anyway, I just thought that was super gross.
That is super gross.
And I don't even blame the guy. I blame her. Because, yeah, you're 40, you can get a 20-year-old, go for it. I blame her for thinking, yes, this is the best option. My 40-year-old bassist. I'm sure they're not married at all. Anyway, it just made me like her. It's one of those things, like I said, I knew we were never going to date, but let's say we met now, I wouldn't date you, Michelle, because you married your 40-year-old bassist when you're 20. I have principles and standards, and you have ruined them. To me, you're just the worst kind of person.
Yeah, daddy issues, and you're around somebody all the time, and plus they're like, a lunatic because of their popularity.
Yeah.
It's a recipe for that.
I had no idea that she did country. The last thing she did that I remember was that she did a song with Santana.
Oh God, I bet that was awesome.
Yeah.
That's another guy that really sold out.
I guess he did. He did a song with fucking Nickelback, or Chad Kroeger anyway.
He did a bunch of those crossovers. He may have done a whole album of that shit. I don't know why there's so many people doing songs.
Yeah, that was 99 again. That was the first one, the time he did it, where he did the crossover. And that was huge. Like, all these people that never would have heard of Santana, because Santana was a very specific kind of rock music. Suddenly, like, everybody knew who he was. I don't know. I kind of liked the first one because it was the crossover with Rob Thomas.
That's what I was going to say, yeah.
Well, it's not bad. It's okay. It's a fun song.
I don't know. It's not something I would choose to listen to, but yeah, it's not terrible.
No, but then But yeah, he did a song with Michelle Branch not too long ago.
Was she on the piano?
No, I've never even saw her at piano. She always had a guitar. I guess she did piano too, but I always saw her.
Maybe it was just that one song then.
It's a guitar.
I thought it was piano. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's somebody else I'm thinking of.
Maybe.
I just know, like, in that movie White Chicks, I think that's the name of it.
Never saw it, but I know what it is.
Terry Crews is like really jamming to that song. It's my favorite song.
You're wrong. I hate to say this because I didn't even see the movie, but you're wrong. The song, or wait, okay, maybe you're not. But there's another song featuring a girl on piano that is featured in the movie where they're with.
Maybe I am wrong.
Well, there's a scene where the two Wayans brothers, as white chicks, are in a car, like a convertible, with two real white chicks, and a song by Vanessa Carlton, who was a piano chick, comes on. It has, like, the dumbest lyrics of any song ever. It's kind of not that bad of a song, like, as far as the music goes, but the lyrics are fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, it could be. Maybe I'm completely wrong. Yeah,
I think you're thinking about Vanessa Carlton. She was a piano chick, and her song was featured in that movie. Making my way downtown.
That's it. Yeah. My bad. Yeah, so I know nothing about Michelle Branch.
Nice little lick on the piano. Actually, I don't know why I know this, because I usually don't know who married what, but Vanessa Carlton, maybe she's not anymore, but back in the day, she married the lead singer of Third Eye Blind. There's some 90s for you. But yeah, I actually like that song from a piano standpoint, but it has, like, the dumbest lyrics ever. I love, especially the refrain. If I could fall into the sky, do you think time would pass me by? Fuck. Like, I mean, they're just empty, vapid garbage.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no poetry there. There's nothing like it. It means it's just words that thrown together that mean nothing. And words that are thrown together that mean nothing aren't always bad for songs, because sometimes they still have, like, a poetic feel to them, like Whiter Shade of Pale. Like, the songs, the lyrics for that make no sense, but they're still very beautiful in their own way. Love that song.
It's funny how you called me out. You haven't even seen the movie.
I just remember that scene. It's where the girls are like, "This is my jam." They start singing, and they're like, yeah." And of course, being not real white chicks, they're just like, they're just, like, faking knowing the song. I can't remember what it's actually called though. What is the title of that song?
I just saw it. 1,000 Miles.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, okay. What's funny is, here's another weird tie-in off the top of my head, since we're just talking about anything at the moment, is when we talked about Blink-182, the reason I know that the drummer is really good is because on Much Music, they used to do an MTV show called Duets. where basically if you like won a contest or something, you got to do a duet like of a popular song with the artist. And one of the guys was a Blink-182 fan, and he was the drummer. And what they did was they made a new arrangement of "Stay Together" for the kids that would have 2 separate drum parts, where Travis, the real drummer, would play, and the kid would play, and it was really well done. Like it really takes advantage of having an extra set of drums. It sounds amazing, and it was all arranged basically by Travis, and that's why they talk about like what a good actor. And that's how I saw like what a good drummer he really was. They show like for one thing, unlike most drummers, he could like read sheet music and stuff like that. And we were showing his arrangements. But anyway, my favorite episode that I saw of that was actually some girl. She was lived in the States, but she was like Russian or Ukrainian or something because she had that accent, and she was very pretty. And she got to do a duet with Vanessa Carlton, and they did that song where they both played piano and took part singing. And if you can find footage of it, maybe it's on YouTube, she sings it better than Vanessa Carlton.
Wow.
I really like her take on it. She adds little inflections to the vocals and stuff, and it sounds really good. So yeah, that's kind of funny. I don't remember any other episodes of the show. There were probably others, but that was just when Much Music started to sell out in the early 2000s and just throw MTV shows on. That's where suddenly like real shows that used to like focus on music were just gone and be like MTV's Cribs.
Yeah, I saw that Travis guy. I remember him on Cribs.
He was on Cribs. He was great.
What was his last name? Travis. What is his last name?
Fuck, I don't know.
I want to say Best, but that's not it, is it?
I think it's with a B.
Yeah, whatever.
Barker, Baker.
Yeah, that sounds right. But doesn't he have like a crazy drum setup? Like, doesn't he have like a double bass drums?
Yeah. He basically has a set that looks like he should be playing for like Rush.
Yeah,
it's Travis Barker, which is funny because he plays in a genre that is not known for like complicated drums.
Exactly. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Like you don't even need toms like half the time. But yeah, I'm right. Travis Barker. He's 43 now, so still not.
Wow, yeah, he's
old.
not that old. Not that much older than me. Wow.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing about some of these guys. They were really young when these bands started, right? Like when Enemies of the State came out, he only would have been like what, 22? Like they would have been really young. Anyway, I don't know how we got into this music stuff, but I was talking about names before that, having lots of good names in the chamber. The other good thing is, okay, let's say about names. They're all out there. If anybody could ever like be a really good vigilante or actually get superpowers in real life, you don't even have to be original. There'd be no points. Like if I had like the powers at least similar to Spider-Man's, I would just make a Spider-Man suit and call myself Spider-Man. There's no reason to like I have to be original. I'm already an illegal vigilante. Marvel can't sue me because they don't know who I am. And again, I'm not profiting from it. I'm fighting crime. So that's the other thing that I always thought was. I was like, I wish vigilantism could really come in, because then you could just take it. Just be Batman. There's no reason being anything else. Just be Batman. But again,
I'm sure there's some idiot out there that thinks he's Batman.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, the closest that we've seen is there have been some guys that like have legitimately sort of dressed up and fought crime to varying levels of success. I remember there was a guy who actually was an MMA fighter who did it.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Phoenix. Look him up. I think his name is Phoenix Jones.
That's cool.
Yeah, he like fought crime in Seattle or something like that.
And then he got shot. He got shot in the face.
I think he did get shot. He did get really hurt. That's the other thing. Like these. That's the funny thing about like something like shit. What's it called? The one that the Scottish guy wrote. Why can't I think of what it's called? They made 2 movies of it.
Kick-Ass?
Kick-Ass, yeah, thank you.
I was about to bring that up, yeah.
Because what's so weird about Kick-Ass is how it starts. Is the whole point of it, it's supposed to be real world. It's an inversion. Because the whole point is the character says, well, why doesn't anybody do this? For real. Why doesn't somebody just dress up and fight crime? And everybody says, because you would just get shot and murdered instantly. And then he fights crime to a certain level of success, but it is somewhat real. Like luckily he doesn't get shot, but he does get beaten up a lot and stuff like that. But by the time we're into like later issues, like the world just becomes, it might as well be the Marvel U, because there's so many people running around in costumes anyway. Sure, nobody has powers, but it's not even just about nobody having powers, because the point is like, even though Batman doesn't have powers, he's still an impossible individual. nobody could do what Batman does, even if they had his resources. There's no such thing as somebody being a prodigy at that many things at the same time. He's an impossible human being. And then they just make Hit Girl, who basically is that. At least maybe not as like a scientist or anything, but a fighter. She's like a 10-year-old girl that can, like, you know, kick the shit out of like a group of 15 men. Like, I'm not saying that couldn't exist, but the whole point of the comic was supposed to say like stuff like that doesn't exist, and then they throw her right in the middle of it.
Yeah, I was looking at some of the. I was going to bring that up for some of the hilarious names, like the motherfucker is one of the. I like Kick-Ass too. I like both those movies.
I like them too.
And what's Jim Carrey? Colonel Stars and Stripes.
Yeah, it was a really great role for Jim Carrey. It was so different, and it was cool. And then of course he whined later about, like, I don't know, about violence.
Guns, yeah, gun violence. When like that's all his character did, right? Didn't he just have a bunch of guns?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, he was one of the characters with guns.
And you had Night Bitch.
Yeah, that was another case of them like trying to figure out how to like change tone.
Yeah.
Because in the original comic, motherfucker rapes Night. No, actually not Night Bitch. Actually, Night Bitch isn't the one that gets raped. The whole thing is changed. Okay, so you know how in the very first movie or the first arc, he pretends to be gay to be with this really hot girl?
Yeah.
Well, in the movie, they pretty it all up. Even when she finds out he's not gay, she's just like, oh, I still like you anyway, and they fuck like crazy. Great. In the book, it's much more realistic. When she finds out that he's not gay and that she has a thing for her, she goes back to treating him like shit, and then she like texts him a shot of her blowing her boyfriend. Like, how cruel is that? Does even a woman that cruel exist? Ah, you're a lame guy that had a crush on me. I don't like you. Here's me blowing my boyfriend. Enjoy that picture. But anyway, she's not at all in the second movie, and in the second movie, he just starts like dating Night Bitch. But in that arc that it's based on in the comic, I don't remember what happens to Night Bitch, but that character, motherfucker, rapes the shit out of her. And like there's a really like part where he has like the line, he's like, you're about to see would like get a taste of evil dick or something like that, and it's really menacing. That line is still in the movie, except he's going to attempt to rape Night Bitch, and they're like, how do we fix this? And they make it like this. It's like he can't get it up, like, because his henchmen are watching, and he's just like, give me a second here, and they all laugh at him. And I was like, that's probably the right way to go, because it just would have been super dark if he just fucking raped her. But that's what happens in the comic.
Yeah, that would change the tone of the movie, right?
Yeah, I mean, the movies do have a certain dark tone, like real violence happens, real consequences happen, but they're still, they back off from some of the stuff that gets super dark in the comics, and that's one of them. Yeah, this girl getting viciously attacked and then raped, and, you know, nobody comes in to save her at the last moment. Like, no, she gets fucking raped and brutalized, and that's it. And if you read the comic, like, you know it's horrible, but you also don't have much sympathy for her because she's been presented as this horrible bitch. Mm-hmm. Now, no matter how much of a horrible bitch you are, you don't deserve to be brutalized and raped, but still, it's really a messed up thing. I don't know how much I've talked about it before, but the creator of that comic, I don't like him. I just forget his name, Mark something. Anyway, pretty prevalent writer, Scottish guy. He was basically the architect of Civil War. Anyway, I've never liked his stuff. Never been into it.
I like the part in Kick-Ass too when she's got the brown noise, the machine that has the brown noise on it.
I forgot that.
It makes all these girls at her school like shit themselves.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, I'd forgotten until you remember.
That's so funny, that scene.
Yeah. See, that's something that probably a lot of girls do deserve to have happen to them for being bitches at school.
Sure.
Why not? They humiliate people on a daily basis. I don't see anything wrong with them getting humiliated in turn. I don't know. I'm very anti-bully, as a lot of people are, but I mean, I don't know. That's one thing, as I've said before, I can feel good about. I never bullied anybody. And actually, when I saw bullying, I really did try to stop it. The worst thing I ever did was, yes, I might have talked shit behind people's backs before. Not all the time, but I mean, I probably have done that. I've probably made fun of somebody behind their back a little bit. But no, I never actively picked on anybody, and I never did cruel, horrible things. And I really did try to stop it when I saw it. So, I don't know. I think most people that like were bullies grow up are in total denial. They remember it differently. I think it's just a thing. it's always the same thing. Like, I don't know.
Well, they like remember it like that person deserved it or something.
Yeah, or that it just wasn't that bad, or like they were in on the joke. Oh, we were joking around and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's what bothers me about most bullies is like they don't learn anything. They just grow up and become a different kind of bully when they're older.
We've really gotten into a area where it's a bit overboard, the anti-bullying stuff.
Yeah, I know. And it's difficult to find solutions because you want kids to solve their own problems and live their own lives. But at the same time, bullying can be so extreme where, like literally the only thing that would help is a parent stepping in or an adult stepping in and stopping it. Because sometimes it gets ridiculously extreme.
The parent is probably a piece of shit. That's why the kid's acting the way it's acting.
I just read recently, like some woman went to her kid's school to confront her son's bullies. And she got in a lot of trouble for it. I think she even got arrested for it. And she apologized and said it was the wrong way of going about things. But at the same time, I basically sympathized with her. She just felt like desperate. She didn't know what else to do because nobody was listening to her. Because she did actually try to bring this up to people and stuff like that. What's funny is, like, this is how different, I guess, schools are in the U.S. Most people are just really upset that she had, like, gotten into the building in the first place. Okay.
That's the way it is now, with the school shooting thing. It's really, they're like locked down. Yeah,
I mean, we must have that. We must have that to a certain extent here, but I don't think it's the same. Like the high school I walk by all the time does have like a camera out front, which is different. I've talked about this before. Like I always saw like two visions of high school from American media, and neither fit mine. It was the super rich, nice high school where everybody was super affluent and everything was awesome and everything. Like they just had like all the kids drove their own cars to school and they had super great facilities and like a nurse and all this stuff and a security guard. And then there was the other end where it was like high school high, where it was like metal detector, everything is falling apart. Like neither of those versions were anything close to what my high school was. My high school was right in the middle of that.
Yeah.
Without any bells and whistles. There were no cameras. I never went to a school that had a nurse. Ever.
Me either.
I went to a school. My high school did have guidance counselors. I never used them. I guess maybe people did. I never used them. I don't think any of my schools had cameras. Although, as I said before, my junior high school had bars on the windows. In Alcatraz. That's because in grade 8, not in grade 8, in the 80s, before I went to my junior high, it actually was one of the worst junior highs around. It was kind of like high school high. It had like a real drug problem, violence and stuff. Not to the degree of like probably some of these inner city schools in the U.S. and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But no, pretty bad for the area. But as I've always had to point out to Orc, just because there are places that are worse than another place doesn't mean a bad place isn't bad. I don't know. Orc never seemed to grasp that. He would talk about like how he would talk to like he talks to a lot of people online gaming and stuff. He'd say he talked to some guy that was like talking about being in like this rough neighborhood in London, and Orc's like, I laugh at you. Like, have you seen Philly or LA? Like, what does that have to do with anything? It doesn't mean just because there might be a place that's even worse doesn't mean the guy isn't from a rough neighborhood. Of course, there's rough neighborhoods in London. Absolutely, there are.
He's all about extremes. It's either like really good or it's the worst thing in the world. Like there's 2 ratings for everything.
Yeah, Orc. There's middle ground, dude. Have you ever? Hey, if I'm really gonna pick on you now, Orc. Speaking of that, have you ever like rated anything on Letterboxd 3 stars? Just wondering.
I was waiting for you to bring that up.
Just wondering about your rating system. That's all. It's funny. The other day, I bought even though I can't watch the 4K part, I bought the new Blu-ray of Alien, right? Because I've never owned a Blu-ray before, and I watched it twice. I watched it once normally, and then I watched it once with the 2003 commentary. And on Letterboxd, I rated it 4.5 stars because it's an amazing movie. And then I look and I see like Orc rated like some documentary about Ronnie Coleman for 5 stars, and I'm thinking it's one of the best things he's ever seen. I don't know.
I think he's just fucking with us now at this point. I don't think he's serious. Everything he watches is 5 stars.
I know. He knows I watch this stuff, and yeah, I think it is. Anyway, Orc. Sorry if I'm talking shit about your work, but at least I'm doing it to your face, man. Assuming you watch this at some point. I don't know. Nobody knows about this show. But anyway, I don't know what the hell we were talking about before. We went on to a million other things, which I kind of had to do because, like I said, usually when it comes to these movies, I have like a lot of information, background, and stuff. I don't on this movie also because it's such a minimalist movie. I mean, what is there to say about it? It's an independent movie by like a guy, so it doesn't have like big stories attached to it. There's not a famous director or actors. It doesn't use any special effects or anything like that. It's
only 77 minutes long too, so
very, very short, sparse indie film. And the other thing, of course, is as much as I want to talk about what goes on in the movie, I feel like an absolute idiot because I don't know half the stuff that goes on and I need to explain to me.
But I mean, the actual, the time travel stuff is really not that important. You just know, what happens to the characters and their motivations. That's one thing you said to me. You couldn't figure out their motivations for doing what they're doing.
No, I couldn't. I knew that, there were two different personalities. One guy was really cautious, and the other guy wanted to, like, take more risks.
Right.
But I also didn't, and so I understood how they were at odds with each other somewhat, but they were never at odds with each other in an overt way for some reason. They were just more, like, sneaky, trying to, like, I don't know, I didn't get that. Also, and again, I didn't understand the multiple versions themselves having their own specific agendas, like they were completely different people. I don't
they did eventually work together.
If I go back in time to some point, I go back to 1956, and I spend the equivalent of 3 days there, and then I come back to now. Okay, that doesn't work because I didn't exist in 1956. Let's try again. I go back to last week, and there's a last week version of me, but I make sure I don't run into that last week version of me. I go back in time, but I make sure I don't go anywhere I was last week, so we don't run into each other. And I don't stay in last week until the present. I only stay in last week for a couple days, then I use the machine again and come back to now. There's still only one me. Where are these extra people coming from? I'm so stupid. I don't understand.
No. They didn't get back in the box. That's why they're there. They went back and they stayed there.
They stayed. Okay.
Yeah. Before they get back in the box and they go back to the present time.
But once you catch up to okay. So wait a second. In the movie, he goes back to a few days ago or whatever like that. He doesn't get back in the box. So he stays in real time. Mm-hmm. He still will eventually catch up to the time where he went back. Why wouldn't he just merge with his self?
I don't know. So that's some, that's nobody knows. That's all theoretical stuff.
You're right. And I guess that's my problem, is I shouldn't be judging this movie by rules that exist in other movies based on something that isn't real. The whole point is, maybe that wouldn't happen. So, again, I'm not trying to criticize the movie. I'm saying why I'm stumbling over it.
So you're saying, like, let's say he comes back 20 times and stays there. Every time that he reaches the point where he goes back, that should merge with the present time version of himself.
That's what I would have thought.
But I mean, that's not the way Back to the Future works. I mean, if Marty had stayed in 1950, whatever, he would just be an old man while young Marty's running around, right?
No, I don't think so. I think as far as that goes, then he would just never. Then see, we're talking about paradoxes. If he went back to 1955 as a 17-year-old and stayed there,
mm-hmm.
well, then
he would be his dad's age, but he would be existing in the same period of time as his present day self.
But again, there would just be the paradox because he has to get back. Because exactly. If he doesn't get back, he fades out of existence. Or no,
that's
because of his parents,
right?
But the way that movie's rules would work would be like, again, he would be creating a paradox if he stayed. Because if he stayed, then there's no 17-year version of himself to go back.
Well, when he'd be born just like regular, right? Just when he reaches the point where he went back to begin with, he would cease to exist in his 17-year-old self.
Yeah, that's true.
This is why I wanted to do a time travel movie, because we can talk about all this cool stuff.
Yeah. I can't really honestly say what I think the best time travel is. My favorite time travel stuff isn't the stuff that necessarily deals with it in the best way, because like you said, this movie's actually trying to take a more logical approach to it, and I appreciate it for that, but I don't know. I mean, I love time travel, and I've seen it done a million times in different ways. I mean, it's bread and butter in like comics and stuff. Which is another reason why it was so gratifying for the last Avengers movie. It took them a million movies to get to that point, and I don't blame them for that. I respect how they did it. But I mean, to me, I was like, finally, we had to get through all these movies, which I enjoy, because yes, you can't start with a movie where you just drop, a bunch of characters on everybody's heads and have them travel through time and space. You have to work up to it. But as a comic book person, I was somewhat impatient about that. So it just felt really gratifying to finally see like what felt like a real comic book plot to me actually unfold.
You just had to wait to get it.
And that's fine because it was a good journey and they had good movies going up. They weren't all great and stuff. So, Iron Man 3, Thor 2, stuff like that. Not exactly amazing. Actually, I'd take Iron Man 3 over 2, honestly. Now that I think about it. I was really disappointed when I saw 3 at the time, but I like it more now than I did. I don't like 2 at all. I especially can't stand fucking Mickey Rourke. What the hell is Mickey Rourke doing in there playing a Russian guy?
Yeah, what is he?
Whiplash.
Oh, Whiplash? I thought he was. Who's the guy with like an upsilon symbol on him? Omega. Nah, fuck, I can't remember. The red guy.
Wait, are you talking about movies or comics?
Comics.
A red guy that Iron Man fought?
Yeah. Well, he was all over the place. A lot of people fought him, but I know Iron Man fought him.
I mean, he fought sort of a Russian version of himself, the Titanium Man, who was basically the Russian Iron Man. That's probably not him. Even though I don't think Whiplash was Russian in the comics. It's almost like they took Titanium Man and turned him into Whiplash, really, because they took a super Russian guy with a really Russian backstory and made him Whiplash. And they're like, Mickey Rourke can do that. I mean, his accent is good. It just seems weird. Lost in that is that I actually thought their different take on Justin Hammer was pretty good because it has one of my favorite actors. One of my favorite actors that people don't talk about, who we talked about on the show before. He was in Moon.
Oh, yeah. I can't think of his name either.
Anyway, I love him. He's one of my favorites. There's a movie out on, I think, Netflix or Amazon or something right now called, like, Blue Iguana that he's the star of. So I'm going to watch it just because it's him.
He was in that damn Poltergeist remake. And
yeah, it's really bad. But it's not his fault. Like, he's fine. He's the dad.
Right, no, not his fault at all. He did fine. He was probably one of the better parts of the film.
Terrible movie, but yeah.
Terrible movie. God.
I saw that in theater, not on purpose. Ryan and I went to see we went to see Mad Max Fury Road, and we got there super late because one of the bridges was closed. And so we had to sit like right up front like this. And Ryan's like, I don't think I can do this for 2 hours. And I was like, okay. So we just walked out and across and we found another movie and we wandered into Poltergeist. So we're like, might as well watch this. We paid our money.
Man, that was a god-awful remake. Man.
Yeah.
But no, the villain I was thinking of is Omega.
Is it just called Omega?
Mm-hmm. That's what I was thinking. I was thinking there was something else to it also.
Yeah.
He's like red and he has the whip thing similar to Whiplash.
Huh. I don't remember him. I'm sure he's around. So many characters to keep track of. I'm not great about Iron Man villains. I mean, I know the big ones. As I said before, I thought it was cool in Ant-Man 2, they used Ghost, although a different version of Ghost. Ghost was originally an Iron Man villain. But I liked the different Ghost. It was cool. A female Ghost.
I saw the new Pet Sematary finally.
Isn't it just... Well, it's not bad. It's just nothing. It's just...
It's not good.
There's nothing...
I would not recommend it.
It doesn't... Like, it has zero atmosphere. There's just...
Why was there so much like hype around that when it first came out? I remember people saying that it was good.
I was super interested in it. That's why I went to see it. Like, I really wanted to see it because, I really love the book, and I think the 89 movie is competent but not great and could be a lot better. And I thought, here's a chance. Because, I thought, like, It was really good, so here's, they give the It treatment, but no, it's not good. And that whole thing about saying, like, and I remember reading an interview where Stephen King shrugs his shoulders, as he always does, and said he didn't really mind that they changed, like, that it was the little girl that dies instead of the little boy. He's like, well, because it doesn't really change the ending. Well, absolutely it does. It changes almost everything. It changes the whole vibe of the movie, because for one thing, Gabe was so young that he didn't really talk or anything. But now we have, like, an 11-year-old girl who's talking to him, and all, like, it changes everything.
Yeah.
And the ending's completely different and not good.
I like John Lithgow. I like him in pretty much everything.
Yeah, I like him too.
And I like that he didn't try to do the main accent. Like,
I like that too, but at the same time, I miss it so much. Like
Fred Gwynn, man. Fred Gwynn nails it.
so ingrained in my mind that like even seeing somebody I like John Lithgow do it, like it just makes me sad. I'm like, oh, just digitally put him in this movie.
Yeah, they're just like, who's an old guy that's like a really good actor? Or shit, maybe they didn't approach it like that. He was way too good to be in that movie, by the way. That dude's super talented.
That movie, I was so disappointed. Like, I just left the theater in a daze. I was like, that was nothing. That was just a bunch of nothing. There's nothing about it. There's not. I can't think of one like positive thing to say. Well, at least this was kind of good.
Yeah.
It's all bland, boring crap.
It's not like the Poltergeist movie where I was like legitimately upset that I had seen it, but it's a very forgettable nothing movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I was super disappointed about that because that was just back when I was getting back into horror. Because, unlike some of our friends, I do get out of the horror mode, and basically from like Christmas into like January, February, March, I just was not interested in horror because I'd done it all in October and stuff like that. And finally, I was coming back into it, and I was really excited to see that, and that's why I also saw Us, and Us was easily the better movie.
But Predestination was one I wanted to talk to you about. I know you probably haven't seen it, but
Chucky comes out soon. Just wanted to point that out. So I'll go
what does
that? Chucky that comes out I think on the 21st. So I'll go see that.
Oh, cool.
Or Child's Play, I guess it's called Child's Play.
Predestination. It's directed by the Sperrig brothers.
I've not seen it,
but it stars Ethan Hawke, and it's based on a short story. Is it about zombies? All You Zombies.
Okay, I've heard of that.
We were talking about science fiction recently. That's Heinlein.
Yeah. As I said, of the big three, Heinlein's my least favorite. I find him more chauvinistic and less imaginative. But yeah, I know All You Zombies has like time travel stuff in it and paradox stuff.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I was really impressed with the movie. I've been trying to read that story, man. It's just I can't get into it. I don't know what's up with it. It's not clicking with me. It's very really very boring stuff in there.
Oh, Ethan Hawke's in it.
Yeah. I didn't even know this movie existed. It popped up on Shudder recently, and I was like, whatever, I'll give it a shot. And I was really kind of blown away by it. It's I'm gonna watch it again sometime soon.
I have to say one of the things that disappointed me about this movie was like it gave me the wrong impression of like because I thought it was going to involve more like I guess standard time loop stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like for me, I like time loops because I like seeing characters going back and seeing events they've already seen multiple times. So like this movie doesn't have that. It just suggests that time loops are happening, but we don't see them.
Well, it's like, okay, time travel exists. You've created a time machine, very, very limited time machine, but what are you going to do with it? I'm going to go back and get stocks. Like, you're going to risk your life, and, who knows what else. You could cause the Earth to implode or some shit. We don't know what's going to happen.
As I said, I guess that's my other problem with the movie. I didn't feel like they had clear goals, and I didn't understand their motivations, and it got even more complicated when multiple versions of themselves with conflicting motivations popped up. I didn't understand why that happened either.
But I mean, that may be realistic of what somebody might actually do if they have that technology.
That's fair.
I mean, it's not like I'm going to go back and I'm going to look at all the crimes that were committed that day and go back and stop them all or something, Like, you're not going to do anything for good. It's going to be to, make money. And I don't know if we discussed, but if
I had access to time travel, all I want to do really is go back to a time and hang out in it.
Yeah.
Like I want to go back to like 1986.
Yeah.
And hang out and just
exist. Yeah.
All this, just exist. I mean, if I also had a time and space thing, then if you could also move through space, then you could get to certain events. I'd be like, okay, now I'll go back to Olympia and see Nirvana. In a room with 15 people, But I'd be happy if it's just a time machine to live where I am, see what it was like back then at various areas. Just hang out.
Yeah, I mean, if you weren't limited,
and also I would be terrible for the space-time continuum because I would love to tell people future stuff. Mm-hmm. They wouldn't believe me anyway, just so it could blow their minds all these years later.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, oh, this person's going to be president or whatever like that, you know.
A black guy? Shut up.
Yeah, exactly. Or, you know, just little places like that. Not stuff that they could stop or do anything about.
Yeah.
Just so that, like, I'm like, I know you're not going to believe me. You're going to tell people for years that one night you met some idiot, some crazy guy that told you he was a time traveler. I said, I know, and no way you'll believe me. But when it happens, you'll remember me. That's what I would love to do. Just plant little seeds for random people that I meet in the past. Just tell them some, not everything, just a few, not even the most important big stuff. Maybe not the president. It would actually be more specific weird stuff, probably. Just so they could have that moment that when it happened, that they remembered that all those years ago they met somebody that told them it would happen because he said he was a time traveler.
Like go back to the day Bill Gates got arrested. Be like, this guy is going to be something special.
Exactly.
Like just some random person.
Did you ever watch that short-lived show that Dimitri Martin had? Where little sketches? Okay, maybe you can find online. There's a sketch of well, he plays a character, but it's like Dimitri Martin, like this character that has access to a time machine, and he uses it just so he can like have sex with certain women.
That's definitely something I would think about.
In really weird ways too. Like at one point he goes back to like 1929 and he tells some woman, he says something like, the whole market's coming down, huge crash. She's like, that's crazy. He's like, hey, well, if it happens, how about we sleep together or something like that. And there's another thing where he goes to Ireland during the potato famine and he sees some woman and he's like, well, this is some crazy famine we've got going on. She's like, oh, that's for sure. You know, my accent. He's like, isn't it crazy that I've got this bag of potatoes? He's like, I might be willing to give them to you. There's a few others like that about him just going through time, having sex with various women. Some of them famous historical figures, and some of them just taking advantage of their circumstances so he can have sex. It's pretty funny.
I think the Human Giant did something similar to that one time. Did you ever watch that show? Sketch comedy?
No, I don't even know that title.
That's Aziz Ansari, Paul Scheer, and I can't remember the third guy, but
I remember Aziz Ansari. It's pretty weird. He's one of those guys I don't understand his fame, but he doesn't bother me, but I don't see the appeal. He yells a lot.
Yeah.
I don't think he knows how to speak like in a normal indoor voice, but that's okay. I mean, that's part of his thing. I get it. He did a really awkward episode of The Simpsons. Fuck, it was weird.
Oh, really?
He played a nephew. What's weird is like in that episode, like he's yelling at Apu and saying like what a shitty stereotype he is and all that. And yet years later, they still had the problem with Apu thing, and they phased him out because people like were so upset by the racism.
Oh yeah, they did away with Apu, didn't they?
Yeah, and remember they got really mad when they tried to address it because there was like this. I don't remember what the hell the episode was about. It was a completely different episode, but Lisa, I don't know. They were talking about something. They were talking about something related to the plot, and Lisa said, well, you know, times change, and things and people's perspectives change, and so what used to have been something that brought a lot of people joy with good intentions, people don't like anymore, or something like that. She says that, and then they like a close-up of like a picture on the nightstand of Apu, like their way of addressing it, and like the internet like flipped out and was like, this is the worst thing ever. This is how you address this? You're awful. The people that wrote The Simpsons are worse than Hitler.
Oh, man, come on. It's, yeah. I get it.
Thing like 16 times, and it's conflicting for me because I get a lot of the points, but at the same time, like, what are you going to do?
Yeah, but I mean, they've got the B that speaks Spanish. He's like a stereotypical Mexican guy or whatever.
A lot of the show is stereotypes. You don't hear people saying the problem with Willie because the Irish are represented.
Yeah, and that's another one.
Drunken buffoons. So that's what I mean. And I mean, I get it because it's a little. I get how it's different for being somebody who's Indian, but still, at the same time, a stereotype's a stereotype. Aren't they all supposed to be equal? Is somehow Apu's stereotype worse and more damaging to Indians than, you know, Luigi, the Italian guy? Hell, they even had that episode that had Lisa Kudrow was in, where they're like where they're throwing the grease around, and Nelson goes, "Here comes the grease ball," and Luigi's like, "Hey, you kids, I bring you pizza. Why you have to make a fun?" Like you couldn't get away with that with certain other races, but with the Italians, fuck it, sure, throw around that racial.
The Italians and the Irish. Nobody's going to say anything about that.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really pick and choose, can you? I mean, if one is offensive, they're all offensive.
Yeah, and that's kind of my view on it.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay to kick the shit out of the Irish and the Italians and whatever.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like, they pretty much shit on everyone. It's comedy. Someone has to be the butt of the joke.
A zillion times. Like Apu is a super positive character. They show, oh great, he's a very good businessman. Although they have the, again, the stereotype of doing some shady stuff because he's a convenience store guy. But like he's very smart and he's articulate and he's kind, but it's like none of that matters because he speaks in a certain way.
What if everything was the same, but they got an Indian person that speaks like that?
I don't know. I guess that's also, again, part of the problem, right? Although, again, it's a cartoon, so you have people just doing caricatures.
Yeah, stuff. But it's a white guy doing the voice of a stereotypical voice. So what if there was a guy that actually sounded like that?
I don't know.
I mean, would that be offensive?
I don't know. There's too many layers for me to...
I mean, I'm just trying to find out like what would not be offensive as opposed to what is, because I mean it's kind of like whatever, what do you got? Oh, that's offensive. Yeah. You can find something to be offended by. I don't know.
And I mean, again, we're picking on a character that was introduced a long time ago, and they've tried to like do various things with and stuff. Meanwhile, way newer shows like Family Guy continue to like just throw out even worse stereotypes. So that's fine.
But I mean, what about the fact that there's an Indian guy in a animated cartoon that's been around for like 30 years? I mean, that's pretty groundbreaking, isn't it? Like, another show that had an Indian, in it.
And just had entire episodes revolve around him.
Right.
He's a secondary character, but he's gotten plenty of plots and screen time and stuff.
I'd say he's one of the bigger secondary characters, though.
Yeah. He's had multiple episodes that are all just about him, which is pretty incredible considering the show is about a family, The Simpsons, and yet he gets it. Yeah, like the Sea Captain doesn't get his own episodes.
He should.
Technically, I think they all should. There's no show on Earth that has a better supporting cast than The Simpsons. Like, don't even try.
Tell you something. My grandfather was a sea captain. He did not talk like that. That's offensive.
Saying all sea captains say "yar."
Yeah, that's offensive.
Offensive.
Slippery slope. I mean, we're going to get like comedy. There's a big push in comedy to be PC, right? But you really can't be, like stand up and stuff. Someone has got to be the butt.
Most people don't understand what PC means anymore. Right. It means different things to different people. It's one of the major problems with it. You can even think that you are being PC and not be because somebody else views PC in a completely different way. That's why I don't like it when people say like, oh, the world's too PC now. I'm like, not really. In some ways, it's not PC enough. People just don't really understand the term and they just shoehorn it to use whatever they think it means. We talked about that before, though, so I won't repeat myself.
I was listening to a comic the other day, stand up, and he got a lot of flack because he said this joke like, yeah, we should build a wall. We should build a wall around Louisiana. Like talking shit about Louisiana, and people got really offended and all that stuff. But it's like, yeah, but I mean, it's a funny joke. I mean, it's just a joke.
Yeah, it's just a joke.
It's, he could have said the same thing about, where I live, and I get the joke.
Exactly. Speaking of that in The Simpsons, again, here's something that really surprised me. So, again, we're going back to the classic era in, like, the mid to late 90s. I'm sure you remember this episode. The episode where Marge winds up acting in a musical version of the play A Streetcar Named Desire.
Yeah.
So what's funny about that is they show like little bits of the songs from the musical, and on the opening night they show the opening number where basically the song is an introduction to the city of New Orleans, and if you listen to the lyrics, it's basically them all saying like New Orleans is like a terrible place. But it's all over the top and funny.
Right.
Like it just shows how stupid people are. Because I never thought for years, like I remember that was years and years ago. I didn't know that like in the aftermath of that, people from New Orleans like wrote in like hate mail and letters complaining. I'm like, how over your head is this? Like, the whole point is it's an overwritten, stupid musical trying for harsh drama. So the whole point is they write like these really, strong lines. Because and my favorite line in the song is actually tacky, overpriced souvenir stores. But the whole point is like, this is the city of the damned, and they're all just saying how New Orleans, and they're all just saying how terrible the place is and stuff like that. And to think that people from New Orleans watched that and took it seriously and thought this was The Simpsons saying New Orleans is awful, when it's so obviously not that. But anyway, so it doesn't matter what. There's always people that don't get it.
If you get too far away from Bourbon Street, it's pretty awful. They're not incorrect. Fun city, though. If you ever get a chance to visit, I'd recommend.
I'd like to go, although I know that my knowledge of French wouldn't help me there with their bizarre.
No.
But I'm trying to think of. So on the Wikipedia page for this movie, there is at the bottom a list, obviously an incomplete list, of other movies that have time loops in them. And there's quite a few I wasn't really that aware of. I mean, there's some obvious ones like the 2 Happy Death Day movies.
Yeah.
Groundhog Day is really famous. Obviously, it might be considered the best one. Edge of Tomorrow, which I still haven't gotten around to seeing, even though I always wanted to see it, not because of Tom Cruise, but because it's based on a Japanese light novel that was quite good.
I picked that up. I haven't read it yet, though.
There's a few on here that I haven't seen or even heard of. What's funny is they actually have Run Lola Run on here, but that's not a time loop movie. That's just a movie that shows 3 different possibilities.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, I wouldn't agree with that.
That'd be like saying Sliding Doors is a time loop movie, because it's the same idea, because it's showing different possibilities. I haven't seen Run Lola Run since I saw it in the theater. I didn't see it back in '98. I saw it in 2001 or 2002 at that theater I had that's gone now, that showed cool independent stuff. And that's the only time I've seen it. I'd really like to see it again.
I watched it not too long ago, and it's not as good as I remembered.
Oh, that's too bad.
But that may just be me. It's where is that? Is that Russian?
It's German.
German. It's you don't see very many German films, so it was interesting.
No, all the German films I've seen are super old. Because like the Germans were like amazing, like pioneers of film, like right at the beginning. Like some of the best like silent era films. And then like a few more, they get the German expressionism and stuff like that. And then it's just like, what's the newest German film I've seen? Like besides Run Lola Run, like Das Boot? That's like 1981. So yeah, like the mass majority of German films I've seen are very old. Like M. It's 31, I believe. All Quiet on the Western Front. That's 1930.
I haven't seen a lot of these time loop movies.
Oh, you found the list?
Short Sir. Oh, that's from 2019.
Yeah, not the.
Like, wait, that's not a time loop movie.
Man, I should have known by the title because it's based on the video game. Prince of Persia: Sands of Time has time loops in it.
Oh, jeez.
Maybe I should see it after all.
I saw Jake Gyllenhaal, right? I saw that in the theater, and I don't remember one thing about it.
Yeah, there's another. That's one of the first times. Other people have always talked about it, but that was one of the first times I remember when like people were really talking about the whole like whitewashing and race lifting and stuff like that. That was like a big deal. Like, well, now we have a live action Aladdin with a legit Aladdin, so it's all okay now.
Yeah. Time Crimes from 2007. That's a French film. It's really good. I believe it's French. No, it's maybe Spanish. Yeah, Spanish.
Yeah, Spanish. Haven't seen it, but
it's really good. Yeah, I'd like to do that on the show sometime.
There's like an anime from the early 80s on here. It's the very bottom one. Yeah. I really want to see it, but I don't know how I could possibly see it. It's never had any sort of release in the U.S. I don't even know if it exists with subtitles. But it's called Yurisei Yatsura 2, Beautiful Dreamer.
From 84, man.
It sounds incredible. I really, really want to see it. Film experiment with concepts such as time loops, dreams, and reality manipulation has drawn comparisons to later works, including Ghost in the Shell, Groundhog Day, Dark City, and Inception. I'm like, whoa, I want to see this movie. but I don't know if I'll be able to find any version, even let alone with subtitles, because I don't think it has any sort of English release. A series of dreams in Abyss foretelling the virtual games of Avalon and Ghost in the Shell. But yeah. So I really need to figure out a way to track that movie down, because it sounds amazing.
I believe it's on YouTube.
Well, I'll do it. I never like watching movies on YouTube, but I will for that kind of...
or at least it's saying it's on YouTube. I don't know if it's legit or not.
But yeah, I've always really liked the time... I've always liked the time loop concept, and I've always liked just the idea of going back and altering things. And I really enjoyed that in the Avengers movie. It's like, Avengers is doing Back to the Future too.
Yeah.
It's like we're going back to past movies, and we're seeing it from a different angle. I don't know, I like that. And I wasn't expecting it either, so I liked it. And it had some good jokes out of it. There's the part where, like, when Cap actually wants up fighting himself, and his past self does the "I can do this all day" thing, and he's like, yeah. Which I think is funny. Because it's true. It would be different about on the other side of something you usually say to other people.
Yeah.
To you, you're like, wow, I'm not as witty and clever as I thought I was. I'm annoying. Of course, what most people got from that scene is, that is America's ass. Which, sure, absolutely it was. But hey, if I want to talk about my disappointment with the movie, like, I get how they're moving things forward. I feel like they were undoing something that made, like, what I was happiest about. So, of course, the whole point, mega spoilers, of that is, like, in going back, Cap putting everything back, he decides to actually go back and live a different life. And I can't remember how they explained it in the movie, but they do explain that what they're doing in the past won't affect their future. Because obviously, he still has all the memories of everything he did, and everything he did as Captain America is still intact. He still found a way to go back and live a life just sort of as an ordinary guy, settling down with Peggy and living to be an old man, and not undoing any of his life as Captain America. Which is cool, I guess, and everybody thinks he deserves it. But at the same time, it did make me a little sad. And again, it is the spirit of these movies being different from the comics, where things actually have to move forward and change. You can't ever go forever. But it's too bad, because I think it was in the second one. I think it was in Winter Soldier. Oh, I'm not sure. It might be in the third. But anyway, there's one of those movies. Hell, it might even be fucking Age of Ultron. It's hard to keep track because Cap's in a lot of movies. But there is one of these movies, even though I remember them really well, I can't remember everything perfectly, where Cap is talking to, I think, Black Widow. And they're saying something about life and maybe wanting a normal life or something like that. And he just says something like, well, wanting a normal life, to settle down, family. He said, I think that's the guy that went in the ice. And somebody different came out. And that line made me happy, because I was like, yeah, I don't want to see movies where superheroes talk about when this is over, or I'm only doing this and then I can finish up. That's not what I like. I want them to just, this is my life and this is what I do. And that's what I liked about that moment. But now we have Cap sort of undoing it. I don't mind it. It's fine. We gave Cap a nice ending. We'll move on with Falcon as Cap, which did happen in the comics, although, again, not forever. But and it is a difference between these movies and the comics. You can't have a floating timeline. You have a real timeline. You have to move forward. Things have to change. That's fine. But I always felt a little bad, because I felt like they just undid one of my favorite things. I like the Cap had that attitude. It's like, no, I don't want a normal life. I'm Captain fucking America, and this is what I'm going to do. Because that's what he is in the comics. That's my least favorite thing of any sort of superhero, whether it's Marvel, DC. It's usually not Marvel, DC, but they get around it. But it was when other people do superhero stuff, because it's almost always the guy saying, or the woman, whoever, saying, this is temporary. Once I achieve this goal, I will get back to it. I don't like that at all. For me, they're locked in for life, buddy. You do this till you die. But no, I hate reluctant superheroes. I hate them. I hate people that say, I only do this because I have to. I mean, it's hard. I mean, that's part of it. But anyway, no, I don't mind if they're reluctant in that way. I just don't like the ones that think they have some sort of end game to it. Because technically there are certain tortured superheroes, like my favorite, Moon Knight, who basically thinks he has to. I mean, when you have like a literal god telling you that's what you have to do, then you have to do it. So there's no out for him. But If I ever finish that Moon Knight movie script, that will be addressed. He won't be saying, "Boo-hoo, I wish I had a normal life." He won't be doing that. And that's the other thing I like about Moon Knight is that he had a fucked up life before he was Moon Knight. He was a mercenary. His life was war, pain, and violence anyway. Anyway, yeah, there's quite a few movies on this list that I don't recognize at all. Did you see Happy Death Day 2?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's okay.
I hated the first one the first time, but then I saw it again and I liked it more. But the sequel kind of seems pointless.
Yeah.
Did she just wake up in a different loop?
Well, it starts off with the roommate of the boy that she eventually was with was in a loop, and then you find out why the loop was created to begin with.
So what, like the loop she was in the first movie was spilling over into someone else's loop? They had loops that were coinciding with each other?
And then her loop started again.
Okay. The main thing I liked about the first movie was it starts with a character you really don't like, and then she sort of sees that she's a shitty person and makes actual changes in her life, which I think was kind of neat. Because that's not something you usually see in kind of a slasher type movie. They don't really have character development. This isn't amazing character development. It's not a super deep movie. But I did kind of appreciate that. Because at first I was like, oh, this is a bitch. Why do I care about her? And I was like, oh, I get it. She realizes she's a bitch and she needs to change.
I don't think this is a slasher movie either. I don't think there's that element to it.
Really? But isn't somebody still trying to kill people?
I don't think so.
Anyway.
I mean, it's not bad. It's more of the same, really. Comedy.
Yeah. That movie doesn't make sense either, though, because her timing's off all the time. So she's not really in a time loop. She's actually in some sort of thing that focuses entirely on her. Because no matter how much she delays, the events around her happen in the same way. Like, she takes like 15 seconds longer the third time she wakes up, and yet like all the stuff outside still happens at the same time. It's all waiting on her. It's almost like the world doesn't move forward until she goes out. But that's just a quibble. I realize that. You always have to do that with these movies that they did with. They're like, how can we make this like not seem too much like Groundhog Day, but at the same time be exactly like Groundhog Day. Groundhog Day did it really well. That's always, I think, the problem. I do love Groundhog Day. It's a great movie. It's like the preferred movie of Buddhists because in many ways it matches up to kind of their philosophy.
That's when Bill Murray and Harold Ramis had their falling out, right?
Yeah. A lot of people say, like, was the movie worth it? Because they got a great movie out of it, but at the same time, it like kind of destroyed their friendship.
Yeah, pretty good movie.
Pretty good movie. Definitely the only good thing that Murray did in like the 90s.
What About Bob? You're not a fan of What About Bob?
I don't dislike it. I just think it's very average and forgettable.
Yeah.
And Ghostbusters 2 I like for being Ghostbusters, but it's certainly disappointing as a sequel goes. It's still Ghostbusters and still has good moments. But then we just get into awful territory where he's just like popping up. It's not really a Bill Murray movie, but he pops up for no reason in things like that really depraved movie.
Broken Flowers?
No, I like Broken Flowers. That's when he came out of things. That's the 2000s. Again.
Okay. Lost in Translation, all that.
Yeah, that's when he was back on. That's when he was back to doing quality for a while. The mid 2000s was great. That was like his fucking renaissance.
Like Rushmore, all that stuff. All the.
Yeah, I guess Rushmore is a pretty good 90s movie he's in.
Oh, that is 90s. Okay, yeah. Wes Anderson. Was that the 90s. First Wes Anderson film he was in?
Yeah.
Or that's Tenenbaum was 90s as well, wasn't it?
Tenenbaum's 2001.
Ah.
But I don't know. He did a lot of just like weird showing up stuff in like at least the mid to late 90s. That was pretty terrible. Like,
I can't even think of anything he was in the 90s.
Like Space Jam.
Ugh.
And that weird movie with the animated stuff in it. Osmosis Jones.
Uh-huh.
The depraved movie I was thinking of is the one The one where everybody's like betraying each other and has weird twist endings, and Kevin Bacon's dick is in it, and
Wild Things.
Wild Things. There you go. Yeah, he plays a completely straight role in that. Like, it's not comedic at all. He's just like, I don't know, like a guidance counselor or something. Just a really weird thing for him to be in.
You had me at Kevin Bacon's dick.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a couple movies that show up, but that's the movie that shows it off. Like, it was like Kevin Bacon's idea. Like, let's get a really good shot of it. It seemed to be like in that scene because he just walks out like naked, like with a towel drying himself, and the camera just like pans right down on him. Like, let's get a good shot of it. I want people to appreciate it.
Yeah.
I hate Wild Things for many reasons.
But you like Neve Campbell.
I do, and I cannot stand seeing those two run their hands all over her. That's one of the things I hate the most about it. I hate seeing them touch her.
Yeah, man, he didn't do much in the 90s. Like Larger Than Life. Did you see that?
I don't even know what that is.
It's about him and an elephant.
Oh, I thought that was called something else.
Operation Dumbo Drop, but that's a different film.
He's in 2 movies about elephants? Fuck.
What year was that?
That's not one I can pin. As good as I am at years, that movie's so...
I don't know. Is he in that?
Oh, maybe. Okay, let's find out.
He did... Ghostbusters 2 was 89.
Oh, yeah, that was 89. For some reason I was thinking it was the 92, but yeah, it's an 89. Of course I knew that.
Quick Change, What About Bob, Groundhog Day, 93. Ed Wood. Kingpin's one that I like a lot.
Yeah, I like Kingpin. I give that some credit. And The Man Who Knew Too Little is a terrible movie that I like for no reason. Like, I acknowledge it's a shitty movie, and yet I still get a kick out of it.
I don't think I've ever seen it.
Quick Change is boring as hell. Man Who Knew Too Little was probably where like a low point for him, where critics were probably ripping him to shreds.
The Operation Dumbo Drop, I don't believe he was in.
Yeah, I know, I was mixing things up. Oh, Osmosis Jones was technically 2000 for some reason. I thought it was 99. But anyway, I mean, he was in the Royal Tannenbaums. Not that he was that important in it, but it was a really good movie. Then, massive breakout in the Lost in Translation. People are like, oh, amazing. Like, I like the movie, but I don't like it. And then, of course, the Garfields are not good. But, Life Aquatic, to me, my favorite thing he's ever done is Life Aquatic. I know most people don't feel that way, but I do. Broken Flowers is a great movie. Fantastic Mr. Fox. He's not important in it, but he's in. He has a weird cameo in Zombieland, which is a great movie. He's not too he's never important except for that's the funny thing, actually. Like, maybe they realized they could never top Life Aquatic, because besides Life Aquatic, he's just always kind of a secondary character in the rest of those movies. And he's fine, but he's not really important. Moonrise Kingdom and stuff like that. I've still never seen The Monuments Men. At the time, I wanted to see it, but people say it's bad. People say Rock the Casbah is awful.
Rock the Casbah. That's recently, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a few years ago. So he's being in a real, like an actual person in the next big zombie comedy of The Dead Don't Die. And speaking of like a world of everybody overreacting, I read like an article just yesterday about somebody being really pissed. It was just an opinion article, but they were really pissed off about things he said about Selena Gomez. So basically, he's in the movie Selena Gomez, and they're doing like press and stuff together. And in like an interview, people were, I guess, asked him about Selena Gomez, and he was really positive. He said something like, "I was really surprised. Like, she's a really good professional," and blah. And he said a bunch of positive things. But the person that wrote this article was really mad about it because she thought that it was basically him, being condescending, and the idea that he thought she was like some stupid, spoiled, crappy, talentless pop star, and he was actually impressed when he found out that she was impressed. I don't know. I felt like they were reading way too much into it. They're basically making it sound like, Bill Murray thought that she was garbage automatically because she's a female pop star, and he was super surprised to find out that she's not.
Yeah, they threw in female. They're just assuming that.
Yeah. Well, it's also because he had said something similar about Miley Cyrus when he worked with Miley Cyrus for his Christmas special. He praised her. But he also said, like, before he knew her, he didn't know much about her, and he didn't know what to expect or something. But again, it's the same thing. It's like, oh, now they have Bill Murray's approval, but he assumed, like, that she sucked because she's, I don't know.
Yeah, he's just saying what everyone else is thinking. I mean, don't we all think they're all vapid pieces of shit? I mean,
yeah, but apparently, no. We're supposed to think that they're amazing and that Bill Murray's this sexist, terrible person, and he's super condescending.
He'd probably say the same thing about Justin Bieber or something too. I mean,
I know. But anyway, speaking of The Dead Don't Die, you're right. The entire plot is already on Wikipedia. Jesus Christ, I want to read that.
Is that which one is he in with Selena Gomez?
The Dead Don't Die.
Okay, and that's not even out yet. Wow.
Yeah, and yet, yeah, like I said, the whole plot is here on here. And it's got a big cast too: Chloe Sevigny, Steve Buscemi, the RZA for some reason, Danny Glover, Carol.
Oh,
Payne.
Jim Jarmusch, yeah. This movie's getting terrible ratings already.
It looks funny.
People are saying it's fucking terrible.
That's too bad. So now they're saying that like his renaissance is over, I guess, and Bill Murray hasn't done a good movie where he was the starring role since like Broken Flowers. I don't know. Yeah, I was all set to watch Rock the Casbah, and then like it got awful reviews, and I was like, maybe not.
I'll check it out. It's got some people I like in there.
Yeah, and it's not like I always follow reviews anyway. Over time.
I mean, half the time I like stuff that gets terrible reviews. So.
Yeah, the best example being like where one time, like I said, I don't usually listen too much to reviews, but the reviews were so negative, like ridiculously negative, that I backed off watching, and that was the Holmes and Watson movie.
Mm-hmm.
You said you kind of liked it. The reviews of that are vicious. Like they're basically saying it is one of the worst comedies of all time.
Did you see it?
No, but I was going to see it in the theater around Christmas because I wanted to see something, and then I backed off from it because the reviews, like they were vicious. They weren't just like this is another shitty comedy or blah blah. They weren't like, oh, here's another unfunny comedy like that we're sick of. They were like, this is a fucking travesty. Like was what I got. I read at least 4 reviews, and they all had the exact same level of anger and hate. They weren't just dismissing it, saying, here's another crappy comedy that is going to disappoint you. They were saying, here is a complete abortion of a film, is what they were saying. Like, and I was like, wow.
That's harsh, man.
And they were talking about people walking out of it in theaters, too.
Because that's not a movie that's going to play for a modern audience. It's a period comedy. I mean, how do you do that? I mean, it's all like legitimate period piece too, but it's just set as a comedy, and it's pretty well done, I thought. I mean,
yeah, I want to see it.
I mean, it's Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly are funny. I mean,
yeah, they've got good chemistry.
I mean, I'm not like it's the best movie ever made or anything, but I mean, it doesn't deserve those kind of.
One of the very few times where like I actually backed off from a movie because of reviews, because they were just so vicious.
Yeah.
Like, because I'm used to like stuff getting bad reviews, and I'm like, maybe I'll see it anyway. But they were just like, this is like one of the worst things. Like Jesus, okay, I won't see it.
That was like Suspiria got terrible, reviews. And I know you didn't really care too much about it, but I love the film, and I wish I had watched it sooner.
I like it. No, I like it. I watched it a couple times. I enjoyed it. I felt like it got in its own way a bit. It was a little ostentatious and stuff. Like it didn't really need to be. I didn't think it needed as long as it was.
You think it was pretentious?
Yeah, I think it was a little overly pretentious. Not super. I just mean it didn't need to be as long as it was. It didn't need to have like different chapters. Like that wasn't needed. I don't know. And the only other thing that I don't like about it was unrelated to that is it didn't really have the same feeling of foreboding and stuff as the other Suspiria, because this movie just right away tells you exactly what's going on. Mm-hmm. Which is a different approach, and I don't dislike it, but I don't like it as much. Because we get all this point of view stuff from the teachers, so we know exactly what's going on. We know what their plan is and everything like that. And it's just, I don't know, it removes a lot of the suspense from me. It's
one of those, it's trying to tell this story that has already been told. It's a lose-lose, battle, because it's not as good as the original, or it's just like the original. They're copying it, or it's I feel like it's as good as a remake can be. You know?
I think it's in a better position to tell a story that's already been told than most remakes, because the original, let's face it, the story is not very coherent.
Mm-hmm.
So this one's actually in a pretty good position, and it certainly is much more coherent, and you get a better idea of what's going on and stuff like that. But I also feel, and again, I don't want to compare it directly, because the first one just has a sort of magic that you're not going to touch. But
I feel like it can stand alone. You know, it's not like some of these other movies we've been talking about. You know, remakes. You know.
And I did not like the music at all by Tom York. I felt like it did in no way fit. It just felt really bleak and weird and sad. And
I thought it was interesting, but I think I'm kind of, one-sided. I'm kind of a fan of the films.
It's not because I love Goblin. If anything, I think the Goblin overpowers that movie too much sometimes. It's too in your face. And that's not the only time they did that with Goblin too. There's a scene in Deep Red where the main character is hanging off the side of the building or something, and the music is so loud and overpowering and just bombastic that it just swallows everything. So I think there's a few times where what's his name got really too enamored with the soundtrack, because there's parts where you need silence, or there's parts where the music should be lower, or at least there's parts where the music should just be more unobtrusive and less in your face. The Goblin stuff is just super in your face the whole time.
I'll be honest with you, man. I'm not a huge fan of Goblin. I know that's sacrilegious. People love Goblin. I've just never been. It's never been something that really stood out to me.
I only like them in the context of the movies. It's not like I'm going to put on one of their albums and listen to it.
Well, they've toured. They may still be touring.
Yeah.
Around.
No, it's not really my thing without the movie. To me, you need the movie. On their own, I don't care. Not my thing. I think it does fit. I think it was a good fit. I think they do fit the movies. I just think he goes overboard with them in Suspiria and Deep Red and wherever else he's done it a few times. And I understand they're doing kind of the opposite approach in this. Tom York's writing really breathy, synthy, sort of toned down music. Yep, the original movie's full of bright, vibrant color. This movie is all washed out, faded stuff. And that's fine. They're doing a different thing.
I thought it was interesting. I thought the music in particular was an interesting choice. Something different, It's they kind of took a chance there.
The other thing that's kind of interesting about it is in Suspiria, the original, it's very clear how evil this coven is. In this movie, you get the idea that the coven might not have always been evil and has been corrupted, and that maybe the whole point of her taking it over is to get it back to being good again. Because all she does is kill off the loyalists of the old one, and she seems to be moving in a direction where they're maybe not horrible and violent. So that's kind of different too, because you get the idea that it's not just about being evil.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, here's the question. So, was she that thing all along and she was just testing people, or was she actually a real girl and then she got sort of caught up in it and became I don't know, an avatar or something?
That's a good question. You would think that she was a real girl, a normal person at one point, but she couldn't be, right? She would have to be the mother the whole time.
I don't really know how it works.
She just wasn't aware of it, I guess.
Okay, so you think she was it, but she wasn't aware. It was an awakening.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, that fits. Because I would say I can't think of the idea of her being it all along, or at least being aware all along, because otherwise there wouldn't be any point of having those little flashbacks to her weird upbringing. Because those wouldn't serve any purpose if she always knew who she was. Because then that stuff wouldn't have bothered her or phased her, really. But no, I do like it, and I do think it is one of the better remakes out there for sure. But there's a few things about it that I didn't like. I didn't like the music, and I feel like it was just a bit overly pretentious.
And I agree with you that what's her name didn't need to play so many parts. I forget her name, but the actress that played basically everybody.
Tilda Swinton.
Tilda Swinton, yeah.
I don't mind her being the teacher or whatever, and I don't mind her being, the bait up thing. I just thought it was weird that she's the old man. Like, that was so unnecessary. It doesn't ruin it for me, but honestly, like, as bad as I am at figuring stuff out sometimes, like, I'm good with voices. So even if I hadn't known that she played the old man, I hear a woman's voice. No matter what, I hear a woman's voice, and it just seems odd to me. Like, she does about as good a job a woman can do at playing an older man.
Sure.
I guess. But, probably the moment of the movie that, like, I thought was, like, the weirdest, and I still don't really get why they did it the way they did it, is when that character, the psychiatrist, is walking along. I can't remember the order of things. I don't know if it's after he saw the fake version of his wife or not. I don't even know what that was about. But just when after he's been talking to her, and she disappears, and now he's in front of the school. Then there's a really quick cut, and two of, like, the women run out and yell and grab him and just hustle him physically into the school. Yeah. I thought that was dumb as hell. I was like, that was your, like, subtle trap. You create this fake version of his wife to talk to him and stuff, and then she just disappears, and then you just run out and grab him the whole time? What the fuck kind of plan was that? That's how you use your great magic? Like, it seemed pointless. Like, he could have walked in front of that school for any reason. You didn't need to make a fake version of his wife and telling him this story about how she survived World War II, all this made-up bullshit and magic, just so you can have two of, like, your lesser known, like, these are two of the characters that are barely ever even have dialogue, just come running out and they go, ah, and they grab him and hustle him in.
Maybe that was the plan, but yeah, I agree.
I think that was really stupid.
If you're going to lure him there, just lure him inside the place,
Yeah, I thought that was so, like, I was shocked when that happened. I was like, what is this? Yeah, there were a bunch of more sensible ways to get him in there. And and it seemed they have this really elaborate plan and then
just go out there and grab him.
Yeah, exactly. and be really, like, loud and obvious about it too. Like, scream while you do it. Why not? Oh, yeah. Anyway, no, I do like it. I like a lot about it. I definitely would say, like, as remakes go, it is very good.
But that's one that, I kind of avoided because I'd heard some talk about, how it wasn't that good and whatever. But
the only thing I read an article, was negative, but it was negative in a different way. Like, they made it sound like it was really bland and forgettable. I was like, wow, really? I don't think it was bland at all.
I wouldn't say that at all.
Yeah, they made it sound like it was bland and soulless. So I was like, no way. Like, it definitely is memorable and has, like, its own feel and vibe and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I know I prefer the feel and vibe of the original, but you can't always do that. And as I said, I appreciate them trying to do something different instead of just doing the same thing again.
Yeah, well, that's Dario Argento's masterpiece,
Yeah.
So it's a pretty big film. That I would say 90% of the audience doesn't even know that film exists.
Yeah.
Which
I can't tell you. I so wanted to see this in the theater. I was enraged when I found out this wasn't playing anywhere near me. I was so mad.
I don't know that I would have gone if it was playing near me. Hindsight,
Really?
But knowing that I would like it, but I was expecting it to not be good.
I was actively anticipating this movie. I really wanted to see it.
I'm just geared to not like remakes, and that's just because most of them aren't good.
Yeah,
that's basically why I probably wouldn't have wasted the money to see it. But
no, well, I had no idea what I was going to think of it, but it was a priority. I super wanted to see it. I really did. Mainly because I knew it wasn't just like your typical, whether it was good or not, there was something I knew about it. It was not your typical remake. It wasn't, it wasn't like a lot of these other remakes that come out lately. I knew it was going to be more arty, for one thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think they went a little overboard in it, but still, I appreciate a lot of it, too.
Yeah, I can see that.
I don't know. It's funny, I'm mostly geared not to like remakes too, but speaking of Child's Play, to me, I think it has a great chance of being way better than the original, because I've just never really liked the original very much, or the series very much. I don't want to pick on it too much, because it's about a demonic doll, but I've said this before. I think this just seems like a much better angle. The idea of a stupid serial killer using a voodoo curse to put his body in a doll is stupid. I really can't get past. I just can't. I like lots of stupid movies, but every once in a while there's something stupid in a movie that I don't know, I can't get past. And you can bring up a million examples, and you'd be like, "Well, you like this, and it's really stupid." And I'd be like, "Yes, I did. That stupid worked for me, but this was too stupid. I don't know." And that's one of them. That's one of them. There's another one too. I can't think now.
I'm looking at what's coming out. It's like not a whole. I mean, what else is coming out this summer? I mean, like Lion King.
Yeah, I guess Lion King's the big summer movie. I mean, everything shot its like before summer started. Avengers, which was like the biggest movie of the decade. Right. So everything else that comes out pales in comparison, really.
Dark Phoenix just came out, and I heard from Eric that's not too good.
Yeah, and he's somebody that like has made some not excuses, but he's made some decent points about why some of the X movies aren't as terrible as I see them.
Yeah,
he likes things about them, and he said it wasn't very good and stuff. So yeah.
Terminator: Dark Fate. I am going to go see that.
No way. I saw Genesis in theater, and it was awful, start to finish. So I'm not doing that again.
Rocket Man. I'll wait on that one.
Yeah, Rocket Man. What's funny is I like Queen more than I like Elton John, but I'm more interested in the Rocket Man movie than the Queen movie. But again, I'm not going to go see it. But speaking of a music movie that I might see is Yesterday. You see the thing for that?
No, I haven't.
Okay, well, I think it comes out on the 28th. It's about this guy. He's like a musician, but he's basically a failed musician. Like he's been trying for years to like, I don't know, get gigs and albums and stuff. But anyway, he's just one of those middle of the road guys, never made it guy, but he's still been trying. And I don't know, I hate how this happens in a lot of those different movies. It's like getting hit by a bus. But yeah, I think he gets hit by a bus or something. Anyway, he like wakes up in the hospital and he's messed up, but he's okay and he recovers. Anyway, he now realizes that somehow having been hit in the bus, he's in a different world. How is the world different? He goes to see, everything is the same. He goes to see some of his friends or something like that. But then he starts playing, he has his guitar, because he often plays songs for them because he's a musician. He takes out his guitar and starts playing Yesterday by the Beatles. And they're like, that's an amazing song. What the fuck? Turns out he's in an alternate reality where the Beatles don't exist. And so he basically, by playing their songs, becomes like a phenomenon. And of course, the struggle of, feeling kind of like a fraud and stuff. So anyway, sounds kind of interesting. And plus, it has a bunch of versions, obviously, of the Beatles songs, him doing it. And I'm a big Beatles fan. So it seems kind of interesting. I'd like to see how it all turns out. So I don't know if I'll see that in theater or not, but it looks at least a little bit different.
It's got a hell of a cast.
Yeah. The only problem with a movie like that is, again, it's kind of what we were talking about when we were talking about the time travel stuff, is logistically, how would it work? Because the idea, this is a movie where the Beatles never existed, but that would have a much bigger ripple effect than just, there's no Beatles, there's no White Album, there's no these songs. Because the Beatles had such a ridiculous effect on all the music that followed them, right? He'd be in a world where everything musically would be different pretty much. Not everything, but, most things.
Yeah, imagine the different, well, I don't know. I don't know if it would be as different as you think without the Beatles existing.
Oh, I do.
Someone else would have come in there and taken that place, probably. Because, I mean, that British scene, did they start the British scene? Like the British rock scene?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's funny. The last Beatles album I bought, it's not one of their albums. It's, and it's less than, oh, shit, what was I going to say? Oh, okay. Yeah, so I've said this before. I'm a big Beatles fan. I like later Beatles more than early Beatles, but this is early stuff. What is it? It's their concert at Shea Stadium from like 64, 65, right? And they did like a DVD, not a DVD. They did a man, I'm tripping over my words right now. Documentary called like 8 Days a Week, and it was about the making of it, and the album's called that. And anyway, and it took a lot of like really sophisticated technology to basically remaster it so that it works. But anyway, my point is, the reason it took that is because there was no such thing as stadium rock. That did not exist.
Okay.
There was no such thing as a crowd of like 100,000 people going to see a band. That had never happened ever. They were the pioneers of that, and they really had to change technology just to make it work. And what's interesting, and this is another thing that's testament to how good the Beatles were. Like when you think about it, even on like this CD that they've tried to fix and compress over the years. Like, the crowd is so loud. And remember, this is 1965 or whatever. There's no such thing as monitors, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
So there is no way the band can hear themselves. And yet they're hitting all the notes perfectly. Like, it's incredible, like, how good they were musicians when you think about it. So that's another thing. So yes, eventually I guess Stadium Rock would have happened, but it probably would have happened a lot later. Yeah, we take for granted now, but yeah, there was no such thing as Stadium Rock. Like, that was the thing. The Beatles came to America, and the venues weren't big enough. They were like, what are we going to do? Football stadiums, I guess. And people laughed, and then they filled up like that. They're like, football stadiums? That makes no sense at all. I mean, and if you see footage from the Shea Stadium stuff, like, it's insane, because it's not even just like all the places where the people would sit in a stadium. They're on the field, too. They're literally everywhere.
Wow.
They're literally everywhere the band isn't. The band's just on like this little tiny island of a stage, surrounded. It's insane. But anyway,
Wow.
so yeah, I think their impact on the music world is pretty hard to overstate. And I'm just saying it's a problem of the movie, because they'll probably still have all the same bands and stuff. But the bands might exist, but they would be different. Not all of them, but a lot of them would. And some of them never would come together again. Fucking Black Sabbath wouldn't have come together if not for the Beatles. It sounds funny because they're so different, but I mean, that's why Ozzy wanted to be a musician, because he loved the Beatles.
Wow. That's crazy. That's like an entire genre that wouldn't exist.
Again, I think
heavy metal wouldn't exist.
Like you said, I think it would, but it would have taken a longer time in getting there, and it would have been very different.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, I mean, they started heavy metal for sure.
Well, think about all the people that they put up, too, that they probably gave them their chance and, let them open for them or whatever, that, became big because of the Beatles.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah, so, again, I've only seen the previews, so I don't know. But I assume they're going to make the world as more or less exactly the same, except no Beatles. And that's probably the better way to do it. Because if you get into asking those questions, it's like, yeah, it gets too difficult. But anyway, I'm interested in the movie, even though it's not necessarily a super original concept. I don't know. I'm a Beatles fan, and I like it. And I'm sure it'll all come to some sort of interesting, heartwarming ending. Because I'm sure he won't just go on being a fraud.
He's going to start creating his own music or something.
But I mean, it is one of those interesting what-if scenarios, though. If you were a musician, and suddenly you realize, like, one of the most brilliant musical catalogs in history is just up for grabs. You can have it. You can have it. You can do Hey Jude and blow people's minds in 2019 because they've never heard it, and it's yours.
Yeah, but it's like you could take Michael Jackson's music, and I mean, I think Michael Jackson is what made that music what it was. Like his charisma and his, you could take somebody that can dance like that or whatever and sing the music, but it may not be successful.
Oh yeah, and that's for sure too. And that's the other thing. This is just one guy. The Beatles were 4 guys, 3 of whom were, brilliant songwriters.
Right.
And I know Ringo get kicked around a lot, but at least he was a pretty competent drummer. Give him some credit there.
He wouldn't have stuck around so long if he wasn't.
Yeah. Although, was he any better than Pete Best? Sure, they say that Pete Best wasn't good enough, but we all know Pete Best got kicked out because of John's ego. Pete Best was so handsome, and John didn't like that because he already had to contend with, Paul.
Get that mongrel in here. Get that moon face Ringo in here.
Exactly. Nobody likes that. And I'm sure it just offended John's sensibilities anyway. A drummer? Girls like a drummer? What the fuck? And then, of course, he had to deal with the irony of, like, Paul always being the cute one anyway. I don't know. John is my favorite Beatle, but I'm sure he was definitely the least pleasant.
Oh, yeah.
He was definitely full of himself and kind of a dick in a lot of ways. And it is true, like, he had somewhat of an abusive relationship with his first wife. I'm not giving him a pass at all, but the one thing I'll say about him compared to some of these other people where that has come out is, like, he was remorseful about it. I mean, he can't go back and fix it and undo it, but he was remorseful about it and never did anything like that in future relationships or, with what's her name? Yoko. So, I mean, at least he felt bad about it and changed to a certain extent. Help us.
Well, cool, man. I guess
Anyway,
we can go ahead and wrap up.
We can wrap up. I feel bad that we spent probably more than half the episode just talking about other stuff. And I mean, I do like talking about the time travel stuff, and we did try to talk about time travel and compare it to some other movies and stuff like that. And yeah, just to reiterate, I don't want people to get the impression I think this is a bad movie. I mean, considering the budget and everything they had to work with, I think it's a really good movie, and I give it a lot of credit for taking time travel and giving it sort of a different angle than when we've seen a lot. So I think it's a good movie. I just feel dumb because I feel so stupid that I couldn't follow what was going on, and I still don't really understand a lot of it and stuff. So I'll probably watch it again sometime soon. And one more thing I'll say, and this has to do with the limited budget, is they were always wearing shirts and ties, and I felt like I was watching like a non-comedy version of Office Space.
It felt like they were Mormons.
Every single scene, they're in like white shirts with ties talking. Yeah, it was either Mormons or Office Space. And I get that a lot of the movie had to do with them while they were at work. I was like, but don't they ever wear different clothes ever? And also, this is just a weird thing. Remember, there's a scene early in the movie where one of them the one who's like living with like weird roommates or something, right? Remember, he gets up and he goes outside so the other guy can pick him up. There's a weird shot. Well, not a weird shot. I mean, it's a perfectly normal shot. I just don't understand where they are. The camera pulls back because they're up on some sort of like concrete mountain high rise or something. Like there's all this room down below. Like the car's up here, the building's here, but then there's like 20 some feet down below. Like I don't understand what that is. I wish they pull back even more. It's like I don't understand the architecture there.
I'm not sure.
But yeah, so that shot kind of weirded me out, but it was only for a second, and then it was never referenced again. And I'm sure places like that exist, but I don't think I've ever seen a place like that. Like it was an apartment building, and here's the road, but the road was like up above another road, and there was a big, huge like concrete wall or something. Like
this was shot in Dallas,
okay.
So maybe that was like some sort of the highway, interstate, freeway.
Yeah, very much. It's not like I've never seen a concrete wall or a road above another road. It just, I don't know, it had like this weird, like, almost dystopian feel. Like, it looked like, do you ever see, like, on the internet, any of those, like, Soviet places they were, like, making back in the day that, like, they ran out of money and couldn't finish? It reminded me of that, like one of those like weird cities of the future that like Stalin or whoever was trying to build with like all this concrete and slave labor, but then like everything fell apart and it became like this big ghost area. Like that's what it looked like, just like for a piece of it. I know that's a really bizarre specific reference, but anyway, but yeah, I still did like things about the movie. I just, yeah, I don't know. I feel dumb. I don't know. I'm just so used to feeling smart and like understanding things, and yet this movie I could never wrap my head around how the time travel worked or what they were trying to do or how this affected that, et cetera, et cetera. I felt kind of stupid because I'm usually the one explaining stuff to other people when they said they didn't get this or that. I'm like, oh, I know that. I can tell you. This one I can't tell you anything I don't know.
But I thought I had it figured out, and I don't think I have it figured out as much as I thought.
Certainly more than me. You definitely seem to understand the double stuff. I still don't really understand the double stuff that well, or why. Like you said, like some of it is just my bias of watching a certain kind of time travel movie and following rules. Because you're right. Like, why would why would a past version, when they catch up to the present, disappear? Maybe they would, you know. So that's certainly fair. It's not like we know what time travel really is, or if it could ever actually be done. That's the other thing, right? There's, certain scientists will say time travel is absolutely impossible, and others say maybe it is possible in some capacity, but we don't know. So I don't know. It seems like one of those things that we'd be better off without because it would just fuck everything up. But everybody at some point in their life has wished they could change something from the past.
Sure.
Or get a vision of the future. Even just a little piece. Just to see. Just to know something before it happens. How exciting that would be.
Exactly.
But as it's been said in many other time travel movies, like the responsibility of it would just be crushing. You're like, I know, I'll go back and take steps to prevent the 9/11 terror attacks. But then you're just like, so I should go back and stop other stuff too. And then
you can't do that, but you can't start doing stuff like that.
People die throughout history, and it's bad, and we wish it didn't happen, but that is life. And I mean, how can you weigh these things? It's just like, okay, I need to go back and get some technology so they can get some medicine for the Black Plague.
Yeah.
You know, because where does it stop? The Black Plague was devastating. It killed like a fourth of Europe. Like it was ridiculous. Like if you were in Europe at that time and you lived through the Black Plague, like half the people you knew died, maybe more. You might be a type of person where like 90% of the people you knew died. And I mean knew. I don't just mean like your mom, like your family. I mean like people you saw on the street. They're dead. Like the death was that crazy. So yeah, so it's just like, yeah, if you want to talk about like preventing a tragedy or like that's a major one. Yeah. So imagine just being that kind of time traveler where you're just trying to make history where nobody ever gets hurt or suffers. Like you'd go insane.
Yeah, you never know what. I mean, maybe someone worse than Hitler, should have died in the Black Plague, but
exactly
or
whatever,
too,
yeah, exactly that too, right? Like you do something that seems good and it does a lot of good, but then it has this unforeseen consequence that turns out to be even worse. And we've seen that a lot in a lot of time travel movies. This movie talks about that possibility, but then doesn't show it, which is kind of annoying. But again, I realized they were limited in what they could do and show. One last thing I'll say is, there's a few times in time travel movies where they just yell kind of a rule at you without explaining it and just tell you have to accept it. They do that in Looper, which really makes me mad. Where they're just like, don't worry about it, blah, blah, blah. And I can't remember what the movie is. It might even be a book or something, but there was some book or movie, I can't remember now, that had something about time travel where somebody was talking about, when they were basically saying rules, because they said something like, where they were saying, that whole thing about like going back in time to like change an event. You couldn't really do that because you're one person, and they were arguing with the person. The person said, what if I want to go back in time and kill Hitler? And they'd say, you wouldn't be able to. Somebody would stop you. Like, I didn't like that because it's not true. Because if you really do control time, then you wouldn't kill Hitler at the height of his power, right?
Right, you like kill him as a baby or something.
Yeah, exactly. If you have access to a time machine that works the way you want to, then you don't have to say, I'm going to go kill Hitler in 1936. No. But then again, you probably could kill Hitler in 1936 because again, you have access to history. You can figure out exactly where he'll be when he'll be vulnerable. So you can still probably kill Hitler at the height of his power with all the people around him because again, you know everything. Because if you just go back enough times and observe, you know exactly where he's going to be, when he'll be alone, all that stuff. So I can't remember what that was in, but that was in something that really annoyed me, where one of the characters who was basically saying the rules of time, saying it's ridiculous. You think that you can change things, but you can't. Like somebody would stop you. You try this, that wouldn't work, or something else would help. Like we don't know that. That's just again a theory. But anyway, that kind of stuff annoys me. Maybe I'll remember it. Anyway, we got to wrap up here. But as far as the future goes, we don't know the future either. So we don't know the short-term future. So we're not sure what our next episode will be, but we'll figure something out in the next little while. As I said, we're never at a loss for ideas. So we always have a list and stuff to refer back to. It just basically depends upon kind of our mood, or sometimes just something pops up and one of us thinks of something and that's what we want to do at that moment. But I'm still glad we did this one, even though I couldn't really blab on like I know it all like I like to do with a lot of movies. It's probably good for me to talk about a movie that I didn't really understand or know that well. Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, we appreciate it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Peace out. Bye-bye.